Here we are. Boom. All right. 3, 2, 1. TikTok. We're the Tiki Talk. Tiki Talk Talk. How you doing? Hey, how you doing out there in the world? How you guys all doing today? Hope you guys are all doing really well. Oh, days like today, man. Days like today. If you're hearing like a little thing in the background, my dog literally has some peanut butter, and so he's going crazy on his peanut butter. Oh, man. You get a day off, right? And you just like... You try your best to live your life, and capitalism is just like this all-encompassing force in your life, and I just feel it right here. I feel it right here, just pressing down on my head. Right? The whole rest of my being was like, hey, you should do something, physical activity, go do something. And I'm very proud of myself. These last couple of days I have been working out. I have been doing that kind of stuff. But then my brain and my consciousness is just like, no, dude, you just need to like plane right out. You just need to like disassociate. Because, I don't know if you've noticed, I know I have, this is a fucking capitalist hellhole, right? Like, this place is a shithole. We're literally designing, on purpose, a world that is uninhabitable. And even the places that are supposed to be, like, natural bastions, beach fronts, parks, right? Are just steadily becoming corporatized, right? It won't be too much longer until you're going to do something like take a pilgrimage to Mecca. And then you'll get to the end of the pilgrimage to Mecca and there'll be a big McDonald's banner, right? Like, it won't be too much longer until, like, you'll climb Mount Everest and you'll get to the top and it'll be like, Mount Everest brought to you by Wendy's. It won't be, like, this shit's already happening. It won't be too much longer until you're going to look up at the night sky in order to enjoy the majesty of all creation, the starscape of the universe, and somewhere there's going to be a little thing that says shop Amazon. And that's the dumbest shit of life altogether, right? Ads in your dreams. Look at Dizzy, good to see you. Content, absolute pleasure. Yeah, you see this shit, we live in Blade Runner. AI companions. Yep, that's starting to happen. Although, honestly, that's nothing new, dude. That's nothing new. We've been doing that shit. It's just now they're marketing it better, right? Now they're marketing it, and they're taking the dancing girl on the side of your computer screen, the voice technology, right, and something like Chat GPT and Alexa, and they're kind of combining them all together. So you get the image, the audio, the voice, and the intelligence, if you like to call it that. So you can talk to it, and then it'll talk back to you. And all it'll be is it'll be like having an Alexa, except instead of just being like beep, burr, 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 it'll go beep, hey sweetie, burr, 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 burr. And that'll be it. Like, that's the major difference. And it's like, come on, we saw this trajectory. Like, that's, I'm not even shocked by that. I'm not sitting here being like, oh my god, AI companions. I just was immediately, when I was like, yeah, Alexa, are you kidding me? Like, I'm just going to keep saying Alexa in the hope that some of you guys are now going, stop saying Alexa. Stop saying Alexa. Alexa, search. No, don't do any of that. Travis, 61991. Hey, do you think propaganda can be used for good? Everything's propaganda, dude. Like, once you kind of put that together, everything crystallizes in a way. There's no such thing as not propaganda. Like, there are people I really, really respect, right? People I really, really respect who are like, no propaganda. Like, Noam Chomsky is of this opinion. You know, like, no, we shouldn't do propaganda, and I don't think propaganda is useful and all this. But like, everything is propaganda. Ads are propaganda. If you make a poster, if you make a poster to advertise your protest or something, that's propaganda. It's all propaganda. It's just like, is your propaganda telling the truth or not? Right? Like, is it informative? Is it real? Like, I'll admit this. I will admit this, that propaganda has sort of built within it the idea that it's not necessarily telling the truth. that you're trying to get people to believe something that is false. That's sort of what distinguishes propaganda from news or propaganda from information or something like that, right? And so I think that is what distinguishes, like, what makes, like, why is someone like Anderson Cooper not actually a newsman and instead just a propagandist? Well, it's because he doesn't tell the truth, right? Like, why is Tucker Carlson a propagandist and not a newsman? Well, it's because he's not telling the truth. And I think that is what distinguishes it. But in terms of the actual fomenting and rather creation of the art and the pushing out, whether you're telling the truth or not, the formation of it and the creation of it is fundamentally the same. It's just you need to be clever, and society and reality has shown one of the problems that leftists are having in terms of their propaganda or in terms of their information is that leftists know what they're talking about, and if you know what you're talking about, you actually have like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of like information, and it's hard to know things, right? It's hard to have information. It's difficult, and then it's difficult to show that information in a very quick, seamless, and easy way to slogan, right? Because that's how people actually respond, is slogans. Like, you can take a look at the advertising industry very straightforwardly, right? You can take a look at the successful political campaigns of the modern era to see very clearly that people respond to slogans, and the rules of slogans are 5 words or less. You have 5 words or less with some like negotiation. So if you have like end the is 1 word, right, in terms of a slogan. But you have 5 words or less, and if you can't communicate a robust, large idea in 5 words or less, then you don't have it's not going to communicate anything. It's worthless, right? Like, and that really is how it works. And the left really struggles with this for 2 major reasons. One, the left looks at that idea and thinks, oh, how reduced and petty and what's the fucking word I'm looking for? How lowbrow, right? That's how the left usually looks at it. The left is like, oh, how lowbrow and stupid, and like, yeah, most of the populace is lowbrow and stupid. Sorry, most of the population, and if I wanted to be nice, I would say most of the population is exhausted, right? Exhausted and burnt out and blown away, and they don't have time to read your thesis. They're not going to read your manifesto. They're not going to read any of this shit, right? They need 5 words or less. You just got to be like, boom, there's your thing. And it's got to have an impact, and it's got to communicate a huge idea very, very quickly. And I think the thing that holds leftists back the most is that they refuse to acknowledge that that's completely legitimate. It's completely legitimate that that's done. So they cede that territory to fascists, essentially. Fascists and advertisers, who are basically just like, I'm loving it. Hope and change for the people, right? Like, just like very, very quick, seamless, right? Just do it, right? Like, very quick, very simple, robust, large ideas compacted. And then when the left does engage in this, right, they just get in their own way and they get up their own ass. Like, defund the police, right? Like, defund the police is a slogan. And it's an idea that takes a robust thing and communicates it. But it was so easy to defang. Because defund the police, what are you, crazy? You want criminals to run the place? That's it. Like, you've got to make your ideas, right? That's why workers of the world unite is a powerful slogan, right? And we have seen slogans in the past that have been worth a damn, but the modern left seems so, I don't know, just intellectually like, oh, we can't, well, we can't, and if we, like they exclusively only want to communicate through long dissertations that matters to them. And that's why the left is getting completely trounced. Like completely trounced. What are some modern slogans that are gaining some sort of traction? Tax the rich is sort of doing that. But I actually feel like tax the rich has more or less been co-opted by the neoliberal system itself in order to funnel that energy back into the dying system. All right, that's why you see like AOC and Jagmeet Singh are the people walking around saying tax the rich. It's because they know that if they actually use that slogan to gain the support they need to actually gain the power in the House, then they'll raise taxes by 2% and the rich will keep the means of production and the whole game will just continue on, right? So sloganeering, in my perspective, like take a slogan, put a picture on it, right? Set a time, set a date, send it out into the world. It's and that's where this whole the left can't meme idea came from. It's because right wingers were doing like slogans and just sending things out and happily like giggling and laughing amongst one another, having fun. That's another part of it, right? The left is really disinterested in engaging in the idea that things should be fun, that we should have fun, right? Like the left is really like stuck in this sort of like, ugh, justice and fighting and ugh. Meanwhile, the right is like, dude, sometimes we just want to have fun. Like sometimes we just want to tell fart jokes and shit. Like, and I think there is a legitimacy to that. I do think the left needs to loosen up and have a little bit more fun, and actually, promote a message of positivity instead of a message of shame. That's something that I think the left really needs to do if it's going to move into the modern era with any success. That it needs to start talking about its ideas and start talking about its thoughts, less from a position of shaming people, right? Oh, it's shameful. You're a shameful person for thinking the way that you think. And oh, it's shameful what we did in the past. And you should be ashamed of your past. And you should be ashamed of this. You hear the right-wingers talk about this all the time. And it just fuels this anti-woke hatred, right? It just fuels that. And so I think the left needs to find a way to think about its ideas and talk about itself in slogans that are positive, right? Like, I have very simple ideas. like everyone should get laid. like we should be promoting a positive, sex positive, family positive, birth positive picture of the world. Because now we live in a society where the population is in decline. People are too exhausted to have children. There's this doom and gloom mindset going on. We're all full of microplastics and shit like this. Sperm count is down. Like the whole society is in an obvious freefall collapse, and the left can't simply stand up and say sex is good. Have good sex. Like real straightforward things that I think the masses of people would be like, that is fucking right. We obviously want that. We obviously want that. Like people want to have children. The reproductive drive is deeply embedded in the consciousness of people. And we just seem incapable of articulating that because I think that we are full of shame about that issue, and we're full of shame about a lot of issues. Shame is really, really core and central to a lot of what we're experiencing, and I'm more or less over it. We shouldn't be ashamed of that. I can't even begin to tell you how we shouldn't be ashamed of that. And and there's a lot of things like that, right? But and like, so what are more successful slogans that have come out of the left throughout history, right? Fuck the police. Eat the rich, right? Like, you have to find a way to take large, robust ideas and stop trying to believe that the average citizen and the average person is going to read a manifesto or a document. Like, stop believing that that's going to happen, and then go even farther and say, and it's unreasonable to believe that they should. I think that's another thing. Like, there's this sort of idea amongst the left that, like, well, you should read it, and you should do it yourself, and I'm not responsible for informing and educating you. And then we wonder why the right wing is kicking our ass, right? Like, we need to find clean, concise, easy ways to communicate large, robust ideas in a way that includes people, especially people who have been indoctrinated into the system, while simultaneously protecting ourselves from fascists, right? Just that is a big part of it. At some point, you have to understand that who you're talking to is a literal Nazi, and once you're there, you just are like, boom, get the fuck out of here, get the fuck out of here. Yuri, good to see you, bud. Doomed to Bloom, good to see you, bud. Instead of having capitalism or communism, why don't they just fuck society out the window and go back to being small tribes? It seems like a good world. Yeah, too bad there's tanks. That's the truth, Yuri. Like, you can try, but there's tanks. And we're never going to go back to that. I mean, it's a nice thing to sort of wish for. And to sort of nostalgically look back on this idea. But the reality is that, like, oh, you're all a series of disassociated tribes that operate amongst a vertical organizational structure. Well, I've got a bunch of tanks. I'm going to roll through it. Like, that's just the hard truth. Content, goddamn. One of Trump's CFOs got 5 months of jail. That's it. If this were China, that spawn of a demon would not wake up the following day after sentencing. I mean, a lot of the people in the Trump administration and around Trump went to jail. Right? That's pretty telling, first of all. And yeah, like, why would they ever? Like, a lot of times when people in positions of power go to jail, it is just like the power structure kind of covering its own ass. That there's enough energy and enough people around saying something needs to happen, and if something doesn't happen, then I'm going to start going after you. Right? Like, because you're obviously covering for these people. And so you go, then that guy goes to jail for 5 months. And then everybody goes, 5 months? I guess. But then they stop going after you. Right? Because the whole system is corrupted to its core. Right? And so the only reason anybody actually faces any consequences is if those consequences is if a person not facing consequences means that will trickle downstream and means that somebody else will receive those consequences. And so you put up like the most meager of things and you go like, yeah, we sent him to jail for 2 weeks. And everybody goes, I guess. But then they stop and they drop it, right? Yeah, it's not even rehabilitative justice. Yeah, it's barely nothing. It's like a vacation. And you just know that person, he's going to go to jail. And what's it going to be? It's going to be a resort. Like Ghislaine Maxwell is at. Right? Ghislaine Maxwell's at a resort. She like does yoga and shit. She's living a fine life. She'll be out in a couple of years. Right? And it's the same with these people. Like what was the name of that guy that actually, like, one person went to jail over the whole 2008 financial collapse? And that guy literally lives in like what we would consider a tourist resort. He can like walk down like some of the best beaches you've ever seen. He has servants. Like literally, this is his life. It's like he's in a retirement community, and we're all just like, yeah, we got him. Punishment happened. That seems like justice. Like, we're dumb. We're very dumb people. That's why I rub up against the dogmatists here on the left like sandpaper. Yeah. I mean, like, the left has a real theory issue. Like, we have a real, like, reality isn't meeting up with my theory, and so reality must be wrong issue going on the left. Cant says, man, sex ain't even all that. Well, agree to disagree, Cant. Agree to disagree. Isaac, we can't afford to have children. Yeah, exactly. Like, make children affordable. Pay mothers. Like, here are easy slogans. Like, and these are just off the top of my head in this moment. Like, I haven't even thought about these. Like, straight up. Like, give women money for children. Like, we don't pay mothers. We don't pay families to have kids. Like, we literally are just like, no, everybody needs to work 2 jobs full time if you want to pay rent. And then we're like, oh, I wonder why nobody's having any kids. And the truth of the matter is that none of that's going to ever happen because the rich don't care about building a society. Like, they don't care. And they've been telling us the whole time. Like, since Thatcher, they've been telling us. We're just starting to put two and two together and realizing that, like, oh, that wasn't just political rhetoric. They actually believe that there's no such thing as society. They actually believe that we don't owe anything to anyone. They actually believe that everything is a gold rush where you need to filter up as much wealth as possible. And, like, they're completely willing to destroy entire societies in order to do it. That obviously they're willing to do that. And it really is, like, I think that the scariest, not the scariest, but, like, the reason why we're not putting it together faster, the reason why we as a populace are not putting it together faster, that these people are psychopaths who are abandoning us, is that we seem to believe in, like, something like an inherent good. Like, we have this kind of conception inside of our consciousness that no one will ever act that way. No one will ever, no one would ever, like, create or benefit from knowingly harm others for their own prosperity to the degree that we're talking about. Like, sure, maybe you'll have a story where someone will push someone else out of the way in order to get their own will, but they'll never, like, literally destroy an entire country with, like, military forces in order to do it knowingly. Like, that seems so beyond the pale. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, these people are psychopaths, and that's not rhetoric. Like, it's literally the truth. Like, these people take military forces and destroy entire countries. It's really the case. It's really the case. And I genuinely think, especially the left, like, we need to wake up to that in a serious, significant way. That the people we are fighting against are not, like, making a mistake. They're not in error. They're not simply the beneficiaries. Like, these people are knowingly causing harm on purpose for their own pleasure and enjoyment. That's who they are. And we just seem not interested in really acknowledging that that's the truth. And I feel like that's what's holding us back more than anything. There's this sort of general feeling amongst the populace that, oh, sure, this is a thing that's like inflation. Inflation's a great example, right? Oh, inflation's, it's happening to us, but we're all trying to work it out, and it'll bounce back out, and we'll work on it. Yeah, That's 100% a thing that's 100% going to happen. Because the people that rule us are actually genuinely interested in helping people. It's difficult times, and we're all just trying to, like, get through it and make it happen. There isn't, like, an acceptance that this is happening on purpose so that they can hurt us on purpose because they don't care. Like, and there isn't going to be a balancing that the system's going to collapse, we will be destroyed, they will leave, and that's what's going to happen. And they're doing it on purpose. Like, and they're telling you that they're doing it. That's the most embarrassing part. Like, they're telling you that they're doing it. And you're just like, oh, yeah, no, but, we're all working, and, piecemeal reformism. That's Danny Dorr. China are driving up the cost of living in the West through cuckoo fund renting back housing more than mortgage rates. I don't think that's true, Danny. Like, the simple truth is that, like, it's hold on, I got a story here, right here. Yeah. Corporate landlords are snatching up mobile home parks and jacking up the rent. It's from Yahoo News, right? Like, the truth is that you've got corporations like Vanguard, BlackRock. They're just buying up properties. And then on top of that, you have, like, rich people who own properties buying second properties. Has nothing to do with China. Like, that's what the media and that's what politicians want you to be convinced of. So that if they do something like ban foreign ownership, then people will go, oh, they're banning foreign ownership. That'll get the Chinese out of there and that'll fix it. And then, like, 6 months, a year will pass. The problem will persist. It'll get worse. And everybody will still be like, darn. And then what are the rich going to say? Oh, well, what the Chinese are doing is they're getting around our systems because, the blah, blah. Like, we're a people who genuinely believed that our election was stolen by Russian bots. Like, we're pretty thick. Like, we're pretty thick. We can be convinced of a lot of things. And this narrative that says China is what's driving up the price of things is one of these narratives. Like, it's not serious. It's rich people in our own societies buying up housing. That's what is happening. And we don't need to create an alternative narrative. to that. I don't know why we're cooperating with the rich as they attempt to attack and dismantle us. Cynicism is a defense mechanism. Good to see you grinning. It won't lead you to thriving, but it might keep you sane. Yeah. I mean, I tend to look... Cynicism to me is a form of humor, right? And you could take a look at... what was the name of that movie? Oh my god. It was a... Come on, dude. Why am I forgetting this movie? It was a movie about a fellow, like a Jew who went to the concentration camps, and him dealing with the concentration camps, and it was a comedy. Like, the whole time the guy is there, he's telling jokes and trying to just deal with it the whole time, right? Because a way that people get through tragic circumstances is through humor, is through trying to tell jokes about it. And I think cynicism is part of that. It's a type of humor. Serge, good to see you, bud. Musk and the elites are going to head to Mars. No, they're not, bro. That whole get to Mars things is just a way for Elon Musk to cover the American military militarizing space. That's all it ever was, right? There was no genuine initiative for them to get to Mars. It was so that when they were shooting military-grade rockets at space, people would be like, that's for Mars, instead of, like, they're creating, like, a literal grid, like a defense system grid in order to oppress their own people. Like, you think that they're going to put satellites into space and create, like, a whole rocketry program and all that kind of stuff, and they're just going to look at the populace as they fall into disrepair and be like, yeah, we're just not going to use that. You think that when Jeff Bezos floats a giant blimp full of 1,000 drones into the heart of New York City, it's exclusively and only to distribute goods? You don't think that they're just going to put guns on those drones and float a fucking blimp full of militarized drones into the heart of cities as they fall into disrepair and protest? Like, they see stuff like this. Like, why aren't the U.S. media covering protests in France over inflation and cost of living? Like, you can look at videos like this. This is happening in France right now. Like, they take a look at shit like this and they think to themselves, oh yeah, this can happen in New York. Like, if this starts to happen in New York, do you think they're not going to fly drones into it? You think they're not going to take those robot dogs and start putting the robot dogs into the middle of it? They're absolutely doing that. And so this whole, like, Musk is going to get to Mars is just a cover. It's just the cover story they're using to militarize space and to militarize aerospace around cities. That's what they're doing. It's so very clear. We're just, like, we're easy to trick because we're susceptible to slogans. Like... It's just, we're that kind of people. Yuri says, you know, my family sort of come from a tribe, so we're not all lost, but the government ruined our village and forced us out and put us in bad housing because we weren't taxpayers. Well, yeah, and, like, who owns the government? Right? It's these corporatists and monopolists and industrialists, people like Musk, Bezos. They want to own all the land. Like, Bill Gates wants to own all the land. Bill Gates is the largest agriculturalist. He's the largest farm owner in the United States. Because he sees the writing on the wall. He understands this is a neo-feudal system now. It's not capitalist anymore. It's a neo-feudal system. And he understands that the way to secure power is to control necessary resources for people to survive. Right? So he owns the farmland. So he owns food production. And if you want to eat, well, then you better work for him. And it's real that straightforward. It's real straightforward. Apparently Hungary pays their citizens to have children. Oh, interesting. Good to see you, Aurora. I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Strong claim. I don't know anything about it, so I won't confirm. But, like, oh, you want to prevent population decline? Pay people to have kids. Like, it's pretty straightforward. But we're not going to do that here in North America. Like, we're not going to do that. Serge Patoka, on yesterday's conversation, I wanted to mention people are so divided, and everyone thinks they're right, left, and right, and that they're right, left, and right, and the Christians and atheists and anarchists. I don't understand your comment, bud, but the budgets will balance themselves, yeah. Well, like, money isn't real. Like, this is a big thing that I think people... Like, we say it, and I think people do, like are allowing... Speaking of slogans, by the way, money isn't real, right? Like, that's a pretty good slogan. And the... the and I think people have like sort of absorbed that, but they haven't really accepted it. They don't really fundamentally understand what it means. That like they don't understand that what we are doing is worship. That we have turned our financial institutions and our monetary system into churches, essentially. That we are worshiping something, and we are supplanting the survival of the species for the worship of a false god, basically. What protest is this, says Abed? This is in France. I don't know what city this is. Hold on. No. I don't know what city this is, but this is in France. And the French are well known for their protest movements and well known and regarded for their protest movements. So Musk isn't going to allow them to head to Mars. I mean, just think about what it would mean. Like fundamentally, you are telling me that we are going to terraform a dead rock while we can't maintain and sustain the system that we have now. Like, we are anti-terraforming. We are de-terraforming. We are destroying our own ecosystem. And you're telling me that we're going to successfully terraform a dead rock to sustain life. Like, it's just stupid on the face of it. And you've got to be dumb to believe it. Like, you maybe convince me that you're capable of maintaining life on this planet first. Maybe convince me that you can sustain and balance this ecosystem that gave you everything you needed in the first place. Maybe start with that. Maybe begin with that. But Elon Musk has proven that he's completely disinterested in that. Like, here's a guy who was told, like, we have a Twitter exchange that I think is very telling. He was essentially told to his face, it would take $6 billion. He asked the question on Twitter because he's like, I'm a cool bro. I'm going to help people. I'm a cool guy. He essentially asks, how much money would it take to prevent climate change? Like, how much money, seriously, in order to deal with this climate change problem? And somebody came, give me a credible plan and a credible thing. And a major organization, the name slips me, sent him a tweet and said, $6 billion. If you can give us $6 billion, we can change the climate change narrative, right? And then what did Elon Musk do? Basically told them to fuck off and gave like $6 billion. He said, I'd rather give that money to a charity of my choosing. And so he gave it to his own charity. Like, the people who rule us are unserious. They are fraudulent liars. They're not actually interested in changing anything because they don't think it matters to them. And it doesn't actually matter to them. Like, literally all they care about is their own egos and fueling their own insipid, or in many cases, demonic desires. Like, they're not actually going to achieve anything, right? Like, their legacy is the destruction of the nation. That's their legacy. Yeah, maybe because it looks like that all the time. Man, you couldn't pay me to have kids. I mean, I know I'm not going to have kids. John, can you look up the Rhetoric Triangle? All right. For you, look at the Z. For you, Rhetoric Triangle. You got it, bud. What is this thing? Oh yeah, I know what this is. The Rhetoric Triangle, making communications credible. Hold on, let's find a more robust. Yeah, this is yeah, the Rhetorical Triangle in action. Speaker wants to avoid small talk, so makes message a short, curt greeting. He wants to enjoy. Hold on, I don't know enough about this to explain it more robustly. But what, like one of the things that to go back to the left, one of the things that the left doesn't accept is, like, the left always wants it to be stick to the facts, stick to the facts, stick to the facts. And that's great and all, but that's not actually how people respond, right? People respond emotionally. People respond to emotions, right? And the ancient Greeks understood this. Good evening, Tinker. How you doing? The ancient Greeks understood this, that you can't simply appeal to a person from a logical perspective and a rational perspective. That you also need to convince them emotionally. You also need an emotional argument that hits them in an emotional place. And if you're correct logically, but you don't have a very strong emotional case, or you're not appealing to someone's emotions, then your argument isn't going to be very effective, right? Even though you're right. Like 1 + 1 = 2. That's great. But if it doesn't make a person feel like, for all the talk that the right says about how, the left are snowflakes and all this kind of stuff, like, no one's more snowflakey than the right, right? That's why things like white replacement theory are so effective, because it's appealing to a person's fear, right? Fear is an effective tool. Scaring people is an effective way of communicating, right? The right can show you that very clearly. All of their rhetoric that comes out of Fox News and all of the rhetoric that comes out of this is just fear-mongering, because fear is a useful emotion. It's useful to scare people. It's useful to do it. That's like, and a big reason why they won't show bodies coming back overseas from these wars that they're doing. They won't show, because initially they did. Like, we remember the Vietnam War, they would show caskets with American flags on it, and there was this sort of general sense among the populace that we have to do that in order to show. But now they won't do that, because they understand that has an emotional impact. That you can only appeal to a person's rationale for so long, and eventually someone's opinion will change, and it won't be because they see the rationale of it. It's because they'll have an emotional reaction. Right. That's why the destruction of the arts is so important for the death cult. That destroying the arts is so important for the death cult, because because the arts are capable of creating emotional responses from people and having people respond emotionally and with empathy and compassion to groups that they wouldn't normally in the past. And so you've got to destroy artists. You've got to destroy artists. You've got to destroy artistry. You've got to go after these people. And you can't just let regular, normal citizens create or fund art so that regular citizens can spread into the society ideas like sharing is important. It's just not what the death cult needs, right? You shouldn't let people believe that sharing is important. That the belief system needs to be every man for themselves. People who need help are weak, right? And if you don't believe that, then you're just an envious, jealous person. Like these are the important belief systems that need to be spread throughout the society. Yeah, the reason the left isn't effective in persuasion, he said, is because there is an imbalance. Yeah, and I mean because the left, obviously, I believe the left is right. Like, fundamentally, I consider myself a leftist. I consider myself a communist, right? That we need to be moving towards communism. And so I believe that we are correct, but we aren't accepting that most people are not on the same journey as the rest of us. The child benefits there in Hungary, this is from Aurora again, include paying no income tax if you have more than 3 children. Imagine this in Canada. Well, I mean, Canada does have the childcare benefit, right? And the childcare benefit is designed to keep children out of poverty. So it's not really designed to allow families to thrive. It's only really designed to give people the absolute bare minimum so they don't just collapse into eternal poverty, right? And that's a Stephen Harper policy, right? Like this is why I say outright that Stephen Harper was a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau. That Justin Trudeau's legacy will essentially be propping up the fossil fuel industry, keeping the crisis of capitalism and the crisis of the climate change issue alive in our society. Whereas at least Stephen Harper didn't bail out fossil fuel industry. Like Harper actually believed in free market economics. As much as those principles are false, you can't tell me he didn't actually believe in them. Because when the fossil fuel industry came to asking for handouts from the government, the way that the rich actually do, he said no. He said, look, your whole argument is that this is a free market system. Well, free market. Like, oh, you invested all your money in a thing that failed. Okay, well, free market. Too bad. And that's a big reason why the fossil fuel industry abandoned him. And then started to support the liberals. Because Justin Trudeau said, I'll buy your pipeline. Right? I don't believe in free market economics. I'm not going to do any of that. Right? I think the left right now is too corrupt and is too capitalist. Well, I mean, the whole left right dynamic is a false dynamic. Both the left, both politically, the liberals and the conservatives, or the Democrats and the Republicans, if you like, they're ostensibly allies. They work with one another to keep up the system of capital. That's what they do. And I've described this several times on the channel. It's a ratchet, right? It's a ratchet. What you do is you vote left, and they ratchet it slightly this way so that you go left, 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 and then the right comes and they just go right back. And so left, right, left, right, left, right. And before you know it, you're fucking doing goose steps. John, Harper bailed out the three big banks in Canada during the 2008 crisis. Yeah, so it's not true he believes in free markets, he believes in fascist corporatism. I mean, the argument that I think Harper and everybody used during that period of time was, if we didn't bail out those banks, then there would have been a larger societal collapse. That's the argument that they use. Like, you can watch, like, the Secretary of Treasury going on to The Daily Show, talking about that in that moment of time. That their argument was, if we didn't bail those banks out and actually allowed them to collapse, then we would have had breadlines and we would have had just a general spreading of poverty and so on and so forth. And it's like, so in their minds, the alternative, this is where the too big to fail, right? Another really effective slogan, right? Too big to fail. That's where this whole narrative comes from. And that was ubiquitous. That was across Europe. That was across, the entire system responded that way. And my opinion is more or less like, and the only reason why they talk that way is because they refuse to nationalize. Right? Yeah, exactly. They could have nationalized it. No, that's the real truth. Like, yeah, and you're right, Tinker. Like, you're right. It's not a real argument. They could have taken the negative assets on the government books, liquidated and nationalized those banks. Much better solution. Exactly. Right? Exactly. But we are dealing with a society where the people at the very top of the chain and the people who are the biggest believers in the system are free market capitalists. And the very concept of nationalism runs counter to their entire ethos and their entire worldview and their entire, like, they simply don't believe in it. Like, they simply don't believe in it. And they absolutely refuse to acknowledge the existence. Like, they will not, if you bring up the idea of nationalization, it's just not on the table. It's just completely off on the side. It's not part of the conversation whatsoever. So if that's not a solution, if that's not something that's even possible, yeah, there is no credible democratic solution. The NDP has been taken over by the Liberals. I mean, I don't think the NDP has been taken over by the Liberals. I just think the NDP are Liberals. Like, that what we are actually looking at is we're looking at the Overton window shifting dramatically to the right. And so we have, like, the PPC exists as a fascist party, or at least a libertarian party. The Conservatives, because of the existence of the PPC, have shifted dramatically to the right. And their leader is doing things like defending, like, far-right lunatics like Peterson. And so they're going even further to the right, following the steps of, like, the Republican Party. And what that means is that the liberals have now become conservatives. Like, the liberals are basically just, like, conservatives from the 80s now. Like, they're not really that much different. And the NDP have basically slid into the slot where the liberals used to be. And there just isn't a party that is actually on the left. There isn't actually, like, a socialist or a conservative, a communist-minded party. It just doesn't exist in Canada anymore. And I think that the populace is responding to this by no longer participating in the system because there is nobody that actually represents them any longer. Right? You can see that happen here in Ontario, where you have like a far-right party run by lunatic fringe kooks, which is the Conservative Party under Doug Ford, and then you have a a Liberal Party, which is the NDP, who are responding to the actual leftist party here, which is the Green Party, that nobody actually supports for no reason that I can see, and then there isn't actually like a real socialist option, right? There isn't actually somebody standing up and constantly pounding the pulpit on like we should nationalize, we should do these things, and so what happens? You get the lowest voter turnout in the history of the province, because the people are beginning to understand that the system doesn't really represent their interests and isn't actually going to try to help them. That's the hard truth, right? That the system isn't actually going to ever try to help them, right? Good morning from Australia. Good to see you. Communist rules. Oh man, viewership on TikTok is like in the toilet. I can't even describe it. I bet it's all the Ronnie McNutt guys. They just got tired of me, finally. Jesus Christ. Maybe I'll actually start talking to TikTok. Who knows? TikTok's always a disaster, dude. I look over every time and it's just a sea of like those ridiculous Ronnie McNutt things. So what can I do? Hope you guys are doing well out in TikTok land. Hope everything's going well. There is no credible democratic solution, for sure. Don't. Thanks, Ligadizzy. Canada's urban and rural areas all function like farms, and it's like the country's pure purpose is for the oligarchs, and whatever happens to the people living here doesn't matter. That's exactly what's happening, though. Like, that's how the thing is structured now. Like, it's that I made a TikTok just today talking about that very thing, and I think the populace hasn't clued in yet. It hasn't put two and two together quite yet. I think it understands it on a sort of existential, like they know it in their gut, but they haven't really, there hasn't been a big cultural articulation. It's just like, you know, it's just kooky guys like me right now who are on the far fringes of the society, right? Getting our boots pressed and trying to keep us quiet. So it's just small voices like mine that are ahead of the game, that really understand, first and foremost, that the entire society is structured itself to be a project of extraction and abandonment, right? That what we really need to be doing right now is forming unifying projects. That's why people really support ideas like the basic income, and they support ideas like healthcare. They support ideas like this because there is like the moral component of like we should help one another. But more importantly, and I know that that's like putting it out there to say more importantly, but I do think it is more importantly. These are unifying projects. These are ways for all of us as citizens of a nation to maintain the idea that we should be a unit that operates together and collaboratively, that actually works to help one another, right? And we're not really doing that. We're not really actually doing that. We're living in this environment of every man for themselves. Well, when it's every man for themselves, that means the ship has sunk, right? That means that the ship has sunk. And so that begs the question then, well, what's the project that we are embarked on? If we're not embarked in unifying projects, right? If we're not involved in unifying projects, what projects are we embarked on? And the project that we have embarked on is the project of dismantling the civil society to extract as much wealth out of it and then abandon it, right? Abandon ship. That's essentially where we're at. You want to talk about slogans, right? Well, the slogan that you should attach to today's society, the moral ethos and the guiding principle of today's society is abandon ship. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Grab as much resources as you can. Get off the ship. Serge says, yeah, politics in Canada is just forgotten about, and most people just keep playing the capitalist game knowing that politicians don't change anything. Well, I think people don't know what to do. Right? I really think that that's the truth. I think people are exhausted, overwhelmed, burnt out. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know what to do. Anybody who's actually attempting to organize anything is either, and I see this all the time. There are good people, people who are really, really working and really, really trying, but they're organizing on the principles of let's continue to funnel energy into these dead systems, right? They don't actually exist. They haven't actually gotten to the point where they recognize that the system has abandoned them, that the people reading the letters that you send in don't care. Or maybe they do, but they're just like, yeah, but we're not going to respond. Like, we're not going to actually do any of that. Like, it's not going to actually happen. That the only thing that's left for the populace is to gather in the streets, surround the halls of power, and not just, like, have a march, but literally, like, stand outside these people's houses. Like, that's all that's left. There's no other activity to do. And I understand that there are people out there who are like, yeah, but some people can't do that. Well, okay, that's, I understand that. But the general thing that we must be focusing on at this stage in the game is surrounding people's houses. Because nothing else is going to work. They will ignore you. It's just that simple. Like, send as many letters as you want. Have as many marches as you want. Do anything you like. Think of anything that you can. Appeal to whoever you want. They will ignore you. Right? Like, they don't care. They will ignore you. So you got to make it so that they can't. So, and the only way that they can't is if you inconvenience them. Jacqueline Knopf? I feel like I've seen you in the past, Jacqueline. I hope you're doing well. It's been a while, I think. Joe Biden and all of Congress are Pfizer recipients. I mean, yeah. like Joe Biden and Congress, like, come on, man. Like, they're in the pocket of corporate power as much as the Republicans are. So there's a reason why people are abandoning these systems and abandoning federal politics, and there's a reason why the federal system is going to start balkanizing, because the system isn't really designed to help anybody, right? Command, how you doing, bud? Hello, I'm going to have a meeting at 7 p.m. with Daniel from Socialist Action. Thank you so much for helping me organize. Thank you, Command Genius. I appreciate that, bud. I appreciate that, man. It's good to see somebody who's coming in with energy and who wants to actually organize with people who are actually interested in actual strategy and actual street work, right? That's why I stick it out with the Socialist Action guys. I don't 100% always agree with everything that they have to say. They're Trotskyists, right? So I don't 100% agree with everything they always say 100% of the time, but they show up. And right now in the game, that's what matters the most. Right? You can have a theoretical disagreement with somebody. And I think that the left needs to really come to terms with this. You can theoretically disagree with whoever you like on whatever principle and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, do they show up? Right? Because if somebody is just sitting on a couch, like, there are entire organizations. I think Fight Back is like this. And I like the Fight Back people. Right? But and they're a bigger organization than Socialist Action, it seems like. But the truth is that they're kind of a book club. And they're interested in theory, and they're interested in talking a lot. And then when it comes time to, like, okay, we need that membership to actually show up and actually do things. Well, I don't see them, right? I don't see them. They'll show up at like a gay pride parade where they're surrounded by ostensible allies in order to recruit. So when they show up, they're doing recruitment drives exclusively, but they're not actually showing up to, like, do things, right? I don't see Fight Back signs and things like this, right? I see lots of Socialist Action signs and things like this. So I'm glad to hear it, Command. I hope you're doing really well out there. Serge, yeah, we passively hate each other. Well, we've been trained to do so. We've been trained to do so, right? I'm sorry, I just took a glance over at TikTok and somebody's saying that capitalism actually invests in the country. That's funny. That's a cute idea. We passively hate each other. Yeah. Well, it's not that we passively hate each other, it's just that we passively see each other as competition, right? That we're always competing against one another for status and position and resources, and that's by structure. That's structurally there. That you can't actually talk to people, like, and it's especially bad in corporate environments. Right? You can't actually have, like, existential conversations with people. You can't actually have any conversations with people, right? Because everything needs to be distilled through this corporate lens. Where do I go to see the dumpster fire TikTok chat? I mean, if you're on TikTok, I am the Canadian Commie. Yeah, that's my name. I think it's actually D-A, Canadian Commie. But you can look me up, the Canadian Commie. Not a lot of viewers on TikTok today, so the chat is actually really slow. Yeah, it's I don't know. That's how it is. I assume that they've put the boot on my face. Also, I think that the Ronnie McNutt guys have gone away. So, and the Ronnie McNutt guys always drove a lot of traffic. But I don't know, 771 likes. So it's always hit or miss, dude. You never know what's going on, right? Like the socials are very like spiky, very up and down. Like some days I'll get tons of viewers, and then the next day nothing, and the next day nothing. I've talked to people who have done this kind of stuff before, and they always say like the important thing to do is remain consistent. And that's all that really matters. So when I turn and I see that there's 2 viewers on TikTok right now, I'm not like, oh my God, where's all my viewership? You know, it's just how it goes sometimes. The one thing I'll always say, and I'll always say about this conversation, I have 100% talked to successful streamers and successful people who have done this kind of stuff. And they will tell me stories about how, like, when I was doing this, I would open the thing and talk for half an hour and there would be nobody. And then when I ended the stream, there would be nobody. And I would have like one person that floated in maybe. And that would happen. And then I would close it down and I would cry. Right? I've never had that. I've always had somebody here. When I hit record, somebody's always there. And then when I end the stream, there's always somebody there. And that has always been the beating heart of what encourages me to continue on. Is that so to me, it's not about getting big numbers in the chat and all that kind of stuff. Although I mean, it's definitely part of it, right? That's definitely part of it. But it's that there's always somebody there, and that matters to me the most. Man, I wish I could be out there more. I live far away, don't drive. Yeah, Ligon Disease, tell me about it. Like, anytime there are protests or anything that actually happens, I'm literally stuck in capitalism. It's just the nature of it. You gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, Equilibrium. Good film. Good to see you, Adam. Yeah, this society is known to be super being able to ignore people with a passion. Yeah, we ignore people with a passion. Yeah. Guess I need to register on TikTok. Yeah, if you like. D. Marie, good to see you. Probably because you don't talk to them. They want to fight with you so bad. I came from TikTok, too many haters. But that's the thing. Like, if you actually are on TikTok watching me, like, I don't really engage with the TikTok chat because it's a dumpster fire most of the time. Like, it's a bit slow right now, so it's like people are saying almost nothing, right? It would depend. Good luck. Thanks. Good luck. Good luck to you too, right? All that kind of stuff. And so, you know, you glance over, and if people actually want to engage in a meaningful way, there's the link. Like, the link's in the description. Come to YouTube, right? Like, that's, I'm not gonna super engage with just like this stream of venomous like nonsense, right? It's especially bad. Yeah, bro got a reboot. Here it comes. Here comes the Ronnie McNutt guys, right? I am absolutely amazed. I'm absolutely amazed that the Ronnie McNutt thing has hung on. That's incredible to me. Like, I'm really really impressed, man. Who knew? Like, who knew that was going to happen? Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you too. That's right. If you think that Jesus loves me, then Jesus loves you too, man. I hope that you're doing well out there. Yeah, capitalism greater than communism. Oh, Elias, you said something earlier, and I think I glazed by it. Hold on. Elias, I would like to hear your output. I would like to ask, because I'm not familiar with your channel, are you that far left that you would rather live in Cuba or the USSR than the USA? Where do you stand? This is essentially just a reframing of, like, why don't you go live in a communist country, right? Like, my family lives here, my friends live here, I speak the local language, and I don't have the resources to move. Like, come on. And the idea that I should just abandon the society I live in its moment of need, instead of attempting to appeal to the people I live with to live a better life, is sort of odd to me, right? I just feel like it's a way to dismiss the argument so you don't actually have to engage in it. Well, if you don't love it or leave it, yeah, USA, USA, right? So, I disagree, and this is Elias again. I disagree with most of your views, but that being said, I like to engage in respectful conversation. If we disagree, that doesn't mean we are enemies. Wish more people were like that. Elias, that's not what I meant by the question. I do not expect you to move. Yeah, that's fair, Elias, and you're being fairly respectful, so I'll take it in good faith. But that is the reason. Like, why don't I just go to another country, or I would rather live in Cuba or the USSR, right? Like, I would rather live in a country. Look, here's the bottom line, okay? Like, I'll take your question in good faith, and I'll give you a good faith answer. This is the bottom line. I would rather live in a country that was attempting to solve its problems and failing than live in one that was not even making the attempt. The country that I live in is not attempting to solve any problems. 0% attempt even trying. They're not even trying. Like, all of their energy is being put into trying to convince you that they're trying. But they're not. And it's gotten real obvious. Like, it's gotten real obvious. Like, I hope I don't need to convince anyone that the systems and the institutions that we have are not attempting to solve any problems. Because there are really obvious solutions. There are really obvious solutions to a lot of the issues that we're facing. Like the easiest one. Like right on the screen you're looking at right now. Approximately 600,000 people sleep outside in any given night, and around 1.5 million of our neighbors sleep in homeless shelters. There are 16 million vacant homes in the United States. So there's a really obvious solution. Give homeless people homes. Right? Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? Well, we can't give homeless people homes because then that would offend the capitalist system and the market system. That it would devalue the price of homes and cause problems for the financial sector and the financial aspect. So what that means is that we worship money more than we value life. And it really is, that is what is happening in our society. And so we know that the institutions that exist around us are not, they don't care about solutions. They don't care. That should solutions come out of this society, it will be 100% in spite of the institutional power structure of the society. It will not be because of it. And I would love to live in a society where any institution, even one institution, was even interested in attempting to find any solutions to the problems that exist in our society. And even if they were doing it and failing, I would still prefer to live in that society than one that looked at the problems and essentially said, that's a you problem. Right? That's where we're at right now. Like, the entire society has geared itself to say to the people who are the victims of the problems that exist on the societal level, you just need to bootstrap yourself and grind set. Right? That sounds like a you problem. Work harder. Right? And then if you point out any systemic or societal issues that are at play, these people say, well, there's no such thing as society and institutions. Who cares? That happened so long ago. Right? So it is like we're talking to flat earthers most of the time. Right? Like the people who have power in the society have the intellectual capacity of a flat earther, basically, at this stage. They don't care about evidence. They don't care about facts. And they don't have empathy. So how do you appeal to them? Right? The truth is that you can't. You can't appeal to a person who's not interested in evidence is incapable of emotion in the first place. Like, you can't appeal to them. So all that's left is to gather en masse and become a problem for them. So they have to respond. That's it. That's all that's left. Yeah, and the USSR is no longer communist. Cuba doesn't allow foreigners to just move. Same with North Korea and China. Although I have friends who live in China. I know people who live in China, right? and very nice people, very nice people. Yeah, neither will Vietnam or Venezuela allow you to move there for very clear and obvious reasons, right? They'll never actually let anybody just move there. Like, they'll never, you could be a spook. And that's the simple reason. Like, let's just open our borders to Westerners who are trying to destroy us. Like, no, you could be a spook. Like, you could be an asset. You could be an operative. Like, and they know it. Like, these places were attacked. Like, Vietnam's the key example. Vietnam was fucking leveled by the Americans. Like, we've made a lot of movies about this. The Vietnam War, right? They're not just going to let Westerners move in. Like, that's just not how it's going to go. Although there are Americans retiring there. That's true. If you have enough money, no rules matter, right? Like, if you have enough money, like, the Vietnamese will be like, yeah, come rich people, move here. We've built a nice society for you to escape your hellhole from. Elias asks, what is your take on the world's best countries? Scandinavia, for example, are mostly right-winged. Not as far as the US, but very right-winged. For example, Iceland. I don't really like to talk about things like this. Like, what's the world's quote-unquote best country, right? Like, because it always depends. Like, if you're born into a rich family, like if you're Galen Weston Jr., then you think that Canada's the best country because you're born a billionaire, right? Like, but if you're born to, a single mother who was drinking while she was pregnant, then place probably doesn't seem so nice. And it's also a difficult thing to assess because, like, do you want to live in a country where America is bombing them? Like, so does that make America better? Like, is America a better place to live because it's not being bombed by America? Like, it's a different, it's tough to assess. All you really can assess is the nation trying to solve its problems and thereby grow, or is it attempting to destroy itself and thereby decline? Right? Do you want to be in a country that is ascending, or do you want to be in a country that's in decline? And to me right now, the country that I think is actually trying to ascend and is actually attempting to stabilize and create a good environment for its citizens is China. That if you wanted to talk about what is the country that is actually successfully building unifying projects, that is interested in civilization building, that is interested in creating an environment where people can thrive and live and stabilize, then I think you are talking about China. Like, 100 years from now, outside of major disasters or some kind of extreme sort of a thing, like, who's going to be better placed on the world stage? Is it going to be America, or is it going to be China? And to me, the answer is fairly clear. Yeah, exactly. All boomers and the rich are like, tighten your bootstrap, whiny millennial. Yeah, for sure. The same spooks who were inciting the protests in China, yeah, some suspiciously pale-faced looking Chinese people they got there. I mean, yeah. It's true, actually, Adam. That's funny. Like, that, for those on TikTok, I got a meme up here where it's John Krasinski, and Adam's like, hey, that guy in the meme is CIA. I mean, he might not be a CIA asset, so we don't 100% know, but he seems to be in a lot of movies where he plays a CIA asset these days. Yeah, and y'all, those better countries, Finland and Nordic countries and others from Europe, were built on colonization, stolen resources, mostly from Africa. Well, and also that a lot of the social benefits that they have in those countries come because there was the threat of communism. That the threat of communism was coming up, and so the capitalists were doing a lot of concessions. They were conceding a lot of power. Because when capitalists are actually threatened with revolution, they understand, like, capitalists understand that the source of their power is control of the means of production. They know that's true. And so if they have a credible threat, a revolutionary threat, that the means of production will be transferred away from them, they'll begin conceding things. Right? That's what I keep saying to people who are supportive of the basic income. I'm like, the basic income's never going to pass. They're never going to just legislate a basic income. They're never going to actually say, we should just do a basic income because we're nice, right? They're only ever going to do a basic income or something like that if they feel like there's a credible threat of them being overthrown, right? That's how it works. And that's exactly what happened in Finland and the Nordic countries, right? Like that there was a credible threat of revolution. And so the capitalists started conceding things. That's what happened in the New Deal, right? Like FDR didn't pass the New Deal and do New Deal legislation because he was like, we actually need to care about people. I mean, sure, that was the rhetoric, but like he passes the New Deal legislation because there are people outside his door holding communist signs saying we should have a revolution, right? Like that's how it goes. And I go so far as to say that the mistake that the communists and socialists and the unionists of that day made was that they accepted those concessions instead of doing the revolution. And so it's a mistake that we shouldn't do again, because now we're paying for it, right? That the monster is trying to claim all of those things back. Yeah, best country is relative if you live in Guatemala and are born to oligarchs. It's nice if you're poor in the USA, you hate it there. Canada's liberals are... by the way, that guy, good to see you, bud. Yeah, we're not going to make it 30 years, let alone 100, before total societal collapse. But I mean, the question is, like, is there going to be administrative power or not? That's... oh, I love you too, bud. That's nice. Yeah, but they can't UBI or addressed on house yet. Canada liberals are purchasing $19 billion worth of F-15s. Yeah, I've got a story on this. Where we got? Come on. Do I even have it? Oh my goodness, I saw it and I didn't carry it through. It's like a major Canadian story that's going on right now. Yeah, Canada's liberals are purchasing $19 billion worth of F-35s. They're spending $300 billion for 15 new Navy ships for the next 30 years. Yeah. Like, a basic income costs $100 billion. Like, we know what it costs. We've costed it out. The Prime Minister's office costed it out. Right? So we know what it costs, but no, can't do that. Right? Can't do that. Gotta shovel as much as we possibly can, right, into these ungodly, never-ending wars that go nowhere, right, that actually weaken us, right? These wars that we're doing, like in Libya and Syria and other places, right, they're weakening us. They're weakening us as a people. They're weakening us as a society. We're literally just shoveling money into dead ends and funneling it up, and funneling it all up into the oligarchy that is going to abandon us. Like, it's very straightforward. If we just keep buying weapons, right? If we just keep buying weapons, like, well, where do those weapons go? They blow up. So we're literally just buying explosions. Like, it's just ridiculous. Broccoli cheddar rice, absolute pleasure to see you, bud. Yeah. And then they wait a few generations to pull back those social benefits. That's exactly right. Right? Like, they'll concede it for this little moment, and they know that that's what they're doing. Like, that's the whole point. That for them, it's just like a little moment of like, oh, well, I guess I don't get, hundreds of billions of dollars right now. Oh, well, I still own the means of production. I still get to do anything I like. So, yeah, vets come home and become homeless. Yeah, there's a reason why conscription is down. There's a reason why enlistment, rather, is down. Like, they're missing their enlistment targets. It's because the general populace is starting to figure it out. Like, they're starting to see, like, they talk to these Iraq war vets. They talk to these people. They see that suicides are up. You've got huge amounts of people going on The Daily Show, people talking to Jon Stewart, people talking to serious, credible people in the society saying, when veterans come home, they are abandoned. And, like, that's part of the policy of abandonment. You just get grabbed, ground up, and used, and then abandoned. And so what's happening? Well, enrollment's down, right? And eventually the capitalists will turn to conscription. They will do it. Like, don't fool yourself. They will do it. And And when they do it, they'll do it for a very clear reason. Oh, there's too many lazy people sitting around. We need to get rid of a generation of people. Like they did for Vietnam. Right? Like they did for Vietnam. Good to see you, Anemone. Good to see you. Yeah, what else would we spend those billions of dollars on? Yeah? Bananas? What could they cost? $10 billion? Nice reference, that guy. That's a reference to one of the best written lines in maybe all of television history, which comes from Arrested Development, where the mother, I forget her name, but she goes, "A banana? What could that cost? $10?" Genius line. It's just a line that works on every level, that is so, like, just absolutely captures the detachment of the wealthy in just a clean, perfect, brilliant, and easy way. Adam says, as probably someone who's been a doomer for almost 20 years, be careful making predictions within your lifetime. For example, I think climate change and resource wars will be so that the nation states won't exist in 100 years. I mean, I think you and I agree then, Adam, that like the United States is going to balkanize. Like that it is going to turn into a series of just independent states with maybe loose alliances amongst them. And I mean, I don't think that that's a particularly controversial position. If you take a look historically, that's usually what happens to empires. And the United States essentially exists at this moment exclusively on momentum. It just spread itself so quickly with extreme brutality and extreme violence. And now the principles of its expansionism and the principles of its warring and spreading itself can no longer be sustained. It literally can't sustain itself because it's not interested in sustaining. It's interested in growth. It's interested in spreading itself. And if it can't spread itself, well, then it's going to extract. And that's the way it's growing, right? It's just extracting. And like essentially like what it was is a rash that spread through the body, right? And now it's like forming up into tumors, basically. And just everything else around it is going to die off. And so what's left is just straight up balkanization, right? And the balkanization is as simple as the average citizen looking at their paycheck and going, what's this line to the federal government where they're taking 20 to 30% of my money for nothing? What am I actually getting for that? Oh, is it nothing? Well, it's literally Palestinian skeletons. Like, that's literally what we're doing. We're sending CIA death squads overseas to kill people. Oh, okay. Like, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Like, we could probably do better than that, right? Or I could use that money myself. Like, instead of paying those taxes to this institution that does nothing for me, I could do nothing. And then on top of that, you're going to have a federal government that actually does attempt to reclaim some of the stolen wealth that it's given to the oligarchy. And the oligarchs themselves are going to be like, well, I could just move to Texas and we could secede, and then I get to keep all that, right? And so you have this like aligning of desires that's going to happen amongst the poor and the rich. And I just think that that balkanization is the most likely outcome. And that's just true historically. Like many countries throughout human history have formed up and then balkanized, and formed up and then balkanized for lots of, like, India's done this, China's done this, Europe's done this, right? Like, Africa has done this. Like, it's just common. And so we're going to do it too. We're not different. Like, we're not special, although we keep saying we are. And that's a big reason why we're going to balkanize, right? Yeah, Texas wants to separate. California is in the same boat. Like, it depends on the state, but, like, it's as high as 30 to 40% independent sentiment throughout the United States, and it's on both sides of the aisle as well. It's not just Republicans; it's also Democrats. So I do think it's a matter of time, and you can see it, like, if you take a look at California, right? If you take a look at California, like, California really wants to create the new economy. Even Republicans want to do it. Even Republicans are like, we need solar panels, we need green energy, we need to move into this new economy that we keep talking about, this green economy, right? California really wants to do it. But the federal government keeps getting in the way. Like, when Trump was in office, he literally put tariffs on California purchasing solar panels. It's like, eventually there just comes a point where they're just going to be like, fuck, why are we listening to you? Why are you here? Garv, how you doing, bud? Yeah, it's interesting that no matter what happens with nations, economies, governments, weapons manufacturers end up in profit. Yeah. It's almost like there's a military-industrial complex that we were warned about. CRA hired thousands of employees to review single mothers and disabled people's tax credits to make sure there's no abusing the system. Yeah. But, are they going to Galen Weston? Are they going to David Thompson? No. From Garv, irony is these problems are totally manufactured and can be managed with a more empathetic approach to social development. Yeah, like, that's essentially what I'm saying, Garv, but that's not going to happen, right? Like, our society is too backwards. We are a backwards people. Like, we literally worship money. Like, that means that you're backwards. It means that you're immature. It means that you're not actually interested in engaging meaningfully or with the world in a serious way. That you're taking a look at something we created in the first place, which is money, and then ascending it to the ideological pinnacle. And you can see that all over. When people will literally say, oh, if you take care of people's needs, then they won't do anything. Right? The profit motive, the whole idea that people need to be incentivized by profit exclusively, and you attempt to remove the profit motive, it will result in a disaster, is a worship of money. It is putting money ahead of even the individual. Like, really think about that. That, like, we are in this really individualist moment where the individual has been ascended to the heights of our society, and it's all about, you just need to grind set and focus on yourself and individualize your individualism to be the individual that you can individualize, right? Be the best individual that you can individualize. But even that hyper focus on the individual is superseded by the worship of money. That the individual is subservient to the profit motive. And if you attempt to say that an individual isn't subservient to the profit motive, that there are many motives, that people are motivated by many things, right? Money is just one of the many motivations that exist in the society. If you attempt to put forward that argument, people are just like, no, money. If you remove money from the equation, then the whole thing will collapse into disarray and people will just sit on the couch and be lazy. Like, that's a worship of money. That's an outright worship of money. Because people are motivated by lots of things. Sex is a motivator. People want to have sex. Like, people want friendship. Love is a motivator, right? People want children. People want community is a motivator, right? Like, people are motivated by lots of things, and it's obvious that that's the case. It's obvious that that's the case. But people are so entrenched in this overwhelming worship of money that that they're blind. They're blinded to it. And I genuinely think that we are not, like, we're not going to prevent this breakdown. Like, it's not going to happen. That we are too childish. Our perspective is very babyish. We have a very babyish, like our society is maybe 4 years old. Like, if you were to personify our society, I think 4 or 5 is probably where it would be. That we have sort of this intellectual ethos of about a 5-year-old, where we're like daddy's special boy. We've got nuclear bombs and we're very destructive. Like, we're a very destructive toddler, basically. And we don't have the maturity or the capacity to see the world in a better light. And so we're going to go through a very self-destructive period. We're going to destroy ourselves. For sure, we're going to destroy ourselves. Like, that's not going to, like, you can already see that. Stuff like the January 6th insurrection, stuff like the attempted coup that happened in Brazil. Like, we're very, very, very self-destructive, and we're definitely going to do it. If we wanted to prevent it, well, there's a way to do it, but we'd have to actually do it. And I don't think people still seem to have this kind of Pollyannish view that the society is not going to collapse somehow, that we're all going to just vote our way out of it. Like, it's very babyish. What's TikTok saying? Yep, work or starve, or work and starve. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, not Santa, Satan. Oh, there we go. The Satanists in the chat. I don't stand up and try to check people when they say that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, obviously I don't believe in Satan, but like, I get where the sentiment is coming from. Like, I understand. Like, you understand that what's happening is evil, and that there's we can agree on that point for sure. Imagine Florida and Texas getting their own nukes. Yeah, imagine being Cuba then. Yeah, fuck, they went crazier. Yeah, the market gods know best, so don't even talk about the most obvious issues in society. Yeah, it's the invisible hand of the free market that will decide. Forget about the fact that Adam Smith, the only time he ever said the invisible hand was in a very negative light. He was like, if the capitalists take control, then it will be like an invisible hand destroys everyone. Like, that's basically what he was saying. Yeah, it insults people's intelligence, suggesting that everything they do is for money, no feelings exist, and that this monetary system is that people are hooked to, which isn't true. People are motivated by biological things, yeah, like the need to be outside, or food, or community, or sex, the need to reproduce. Like, I don't know why this never plays. I don't know why leftists don't bring this shit up. It's lowbrow. That's what it is. Look, people want to have kids. People want to reproduce. It's a biological imperative, and it's a biological drive. Like, we have to work really hard to create a society like this that is anti-sex and anti-people, right? We've put a lot of energy into creating a society like this that destroys itself so effectively. Yeah, Canada is a young country. Canada reminds you of those forts built by settlers and managed as such. Yeah, we don't really have a culture. Like, that's part of it. That, like, we are still very stuck in the colonial ethos. People will still say, like, where did your family come from? With this sort of like, oh, we came from England. You know? Like, nobody actually lives here. Nobody's actually from Canada. Right? We're from somewhere else. And so our culture doesn't really exist. We don't really have one. And we're not really interested in building one. Like, if you want to build a society, build a culture, and build a civilization, you need to do so with cultural unifying projects. We're just disinterested in it. Stacy McTrow. Good to see you, Stacy. I'm interested in speeding up the collapse because I have no idea my adult children are going to make it. That's called accelerationism. And I'm generally against it because I don't think that we need to pour gasoline on the fire. I think that we should stand against it. That's really how I perceive it. That our role should not be to accelerate the collapse, to unleash the monsters faster, but should be to stand as lighthouses. That as the fog descends, we must be the lighthouses for people to attempt to find their way. That's more or less how I think about it. But at the same time, I understand your feelings, Stacy. I'm not trying to repudiate you. I understand that sort of desire to let's just get on with it. Let's just get on with it, right? You know, I get it. Yeah, if you've been to Niagara Falls, Fort York, Fort Edmonton, the others, yeah. Oh, I may have gotten cynical. I understand, Stacy. No, I do. I really do. Like, it's hard to exist in today's society. Like, we all know that things should be nicer than this. We all know that it takes a lot of energy to be this psychotic, right? It takes a lot of energy, and we worship that. We worship the amount of energy it takes. That if you say, I'm not going to participate in that, then you're a lazy parasite on the side of it. Because the destruction of the world and the civil society is assumed to be productive, right? That if you're not attempting to destroy everyone and exploit people and destroy everything, then you're unproductive and therefore lazy. It's like absolutely crazy. Command, I'll touch base with you. TikTok, you guys stick around. I hope you're all doing well out there. I gotta go use the bathroom, man. Holy cow. Who knew? Biological imperative. Wait a minute. I'm not motivated by profit to use the bathroom. I guess I don't need to. True love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. It's either I sing or you get to hear me pee, so I've made a choice. Also, I like to sing. This is another thing that I've decided, now that I'm 40. I've just decided, like, I'll be walking my dog around the graveyard that I've got here, right? And I'll just sing while I'm walking around the graveyard. And a younger man might do that, and then if somebody comes by, they'll, like, stop, right? Because they'll just be like, oh, I don't want to hear people. I don't. I just keep singing. I don't care anymore. Nice low notes. Thank you, Reggie. I appreciate that. Garv, you got some pipes, bro? I know, dude. I know. Look, the number one reason why I think capitalism is so offensive is that it doesn't make people like me well known for my singing voice. Yeah. I'm fucking with you. I don't give a shit. It's just, although I do think this, like, I know brilliant artists. Like, I know people who are brilliant singers, really, really excellent, who have gone and been educated and have gone through the educational facilities, opera level singers. Like, I have family. I've got a cousin who's done exactly this, and I know others who have done it. And they work in retail, mainly. Like, the society is a failure. Like, we have failed. We are taking the best artists that our educational facilities produce and train them and facilitate them and give them all the tools they need to have the greatest instrument that they can have, and they basically work in retail. Like, we're a failed society. Like, it's a failure. Command, just finished with Daniel. I hope it went well, bud. I hope it went really well. Daniel's a good man. He's a good man, and he shows up. Like, Daniel really, really shows up, and he's very passionate. So he's a good man to listen to and a good man to pay attention to. Yeah, he wasn't parched. You sound parched, brother. I am a bit parched. I've been working out, and I'm not drinking enough water. And I'm drinking coffee right now, and that's a mistake too. I've got a bit of a headache, and I'm hungry. And I'm tired. And my tail is cold. Yeah. Gentlemen, close the door and sit to muffle the sound. Yeah, I'm not going to do that, Adam. Come on. Demand Better. Absolute pleasure to see you, Demand Better. I hope you're doing well out in the world. Effing landlords. Yeah, my rent went up recently. Yeah, normal society. This is a normal society. That is normal society. What a normal place we live in. It's definitely not a catastrophe. A catastrophe. My favorite was the guy who came in yesterday and tried to convince me that capitalism was good, even though he was, like, living on his dad's land. Like, yeah, I would try to convince people that a system was good, too, if I literally just got to sit on my ass and do fuck all. Ugh. That's why I love Jordan Peterson. The guy's trying to convince everybody that the hierarchy is good, because it basically let him sit in a room and write a book that was pointless. Like, yeah, I'd love that too. Yeah, the dad's land guy, yeah. That's literally every conservative farmer, dude. Like, that's the backbone of the Conservative Party right there. Like, that's the backbone of the Conservative Party. So, the Maple. Canada follows U.S. lead, quits recognizing Juan Guaido as Venezuela's interim president. Here's something that's just quietly happened, right? That it is actually a massive embarrassment from the West, and an embarrassment of the imperial core. That the empire has been trying desperately to destroy the Chavistas in Venezuela. Venezuela has one of the largest oil deposits in the world. And it's not like the Canadian tar sands, which are just dirty, shitty oil. It's the oil that you put a straw in and the oil comes out. And it still needs to be refined, right? It still needs to do all that kind of stuff. And so the American empire, Hugo Chavez took over, right? An avowed socialist, and used the money that he was making from that Venezuela was making to actually help people with it. Right? He didn't funnel that money into the capitalist empire, which is what, which is what they wanted. And instead he used it to build hospitals, build schools, right? Educate his populace, actually help people get out of poverty, right? This sort of stuff that socialists do. This leads to all kinds of crazy shit, right? At one point, the CIA literally kidnaps Hugo Chavez, and they release him because the Chavistas essentially take to the streets. Once again, proving my thesis, which is that the only thing that power responds to is street action, and then eventually Hugo Chavez dies, widely considered amongst the Chavistas as an assassination. Right? He dies because of a heart attack. Right? So they pointed a heart attack gun and they heart attacked him. Right? Just like what's his name? NDP Jack Layton. Yeah, suddenly got cancer. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't shoot a cancer gun at him. Anyway. That's a conspiracy. And so Maduro took over, right? Nicolas Maduro took over after Hugo Chavez. Not as charismatic, more militant, for sure. Which, I mean, makes sense given what comes next. Which is coup attempts, an attempted overthrow, sanction regime, right? The massive sanction regime that has happened in Venezuela, and the most egregious thing that the empire did is they literally claimed that the actual leader of Venezuela was this idiot by the name of Juan Guaido, right? Literally an unelected boob who nobody in Venezuela actually recognizes outside of his little cabal of capitalists. And that lasted up until now. Now that the empire needs that Venezuelan oil again because of their stupidity in Europe, they gotta basically say, okay, Maduro's the actual leader. Okay, I guess we gotta actually say that the person who was elected by the people of Venezuela is actually the leader of Venezuela. It's an embarrassment for them. Right? And of course, no one's going to actually report on it outside of like leftist places like this. But it's a complete and total embarrassment by the empire. Like, the U.S. empire used to be able to just roll into places and destroy them. Right? Well, why don't they just do that in Venezuela? Oh, is it because the people of Venezuela understand the game and have actually militarized and are basically looking at the United States and are like, yeah, you're a major, major, major threat, and we know it. We're not just going to let you roll in like you did on Libya. Right? Yeah, I love it, man. The Ronnie McNutt guys show up, and my viewership's up at 114. It's a big reason why I'm not mad at these Ronnie McNutt guys, right? The Ronnie McNutt guys come in, my viewership skyrockets. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And Ronnie, wherever you are, your legend lives on. Oh, my boss is a big fan of Thanos. Thinks his solution is the right one for climate change. So your boss is a fascist. Like that's like eco-terrorism is what that is, right? Like you hear that with like Bill Burr will say that kind of shit, right? And Bill Burr is joking, but people take it and then they're like not joking. That the solution to climate change isn't confront the system of capital, confront the people who are responsible for creating it, right? Build a society that is equitable and sustainable. No, the solution is to eliminate half the population, right? It's fascist. It's and of course, what the fascists will say, right? Thanos gains a lot of traction amongst liberals because it's random, right? He snaps his finger, half the people die, and it's random. That's not how it would go. Like, come on. Like, come on. Right? We're not going to have a random raffle draw and have that kind of stuff. The fascists will take power. They'll turn to the weak, the disabled, minority groups, the Jews, like they always do. Right? And they'll round those people. And while they're doing it, the communists. And they'll round those people up and they'll gas them like they have in the past. Right? Like, we know that's what it's going to do. And so if your boss is walking around saying, yeah, I'm a big fan of Thanos, your boss is a fucking fascist. Like, objectively. Objectively. He's not a bad guy, just doesn't know the root cause of the problems. And I mean, I suspect he's also just saying it as like a Marvel fanboy. You know what I mean? That like that's kind of a thing that does happen amongst that. And that's why Marvel, like the Marvel Studios propaganda is so dangerous. Because the Marvel Studios propaganda is so dangerous because it eliminates the reality of the Empire. It treats all of the actions of the Empire as not only inevitable, but also just. It creates a good guy, bad guy dynamic. And really the only actual debate of any sort that occurred in the entire Marvel ethos was whether or not people with like nuclear technology strapped to their body should be accountable to any kind of government oversight. Right? That was like literally the only conversation that happened in the entire Marvel-verse that had any kind of merit whatsoever, even though that conversation's really pathetic. Like, and but like the idea, if all you did was get your politics from Marvel movies, then you're an imperialist who worships arms dealers. Like that's straight up what you are, and you can't be anything else. Tony Stark is an arms dealer, right? And it's great that he like got the crystals and snapped and stopped space Nazis, right? The Thanos doesn't make him better, right? He's his entire ethos is that I'm going to be the king, and if you try to be the king, then I'll kill you. And he's just like, and all of those guys are just like neoliberal nightmare creatures. Tony Stark is an arms dealer. Captain America is like a government secret project. So is Bruce Banner, except his went wrong, right? Thor is literally the blonde-haired, blue-eyed god. He's like a literal manifestation of like the Nazi ethos in that group. And then you get what, like Black Widow, Token Woman, and then Token Human with Hawkeye. Like, they're all fucking nightmares. All of them. And if they actually existed on the planet, if they actually existed in the world, we would be absolutely living in a dystopian hellscape. No question. We would be living in a fascist society. We do live in a fascist society, but it would be explicit. Like, The Boys has it right. That, like, Homelander, right? Homelander is a fucking Nazi. And more and more and more in that show, he's just beginning to rule nakedly and rule openly. And that's exactly what the U.S. Empire is going to start doing. That it won't be too much longer, you guys. Here's a prediction for you if you're out there in the TikTok-verse and you're here, right? Here's a prediction for you. There is going to be a piece of media that comes out where the protagonist is not someone like Homelander, where we look at Homelander and we understand that he is a dangerous psychopath who it's right that he is stopped, right? No, what's going to happen is they're going to come out with something like that where the hero is an explicit fascist, maybe even a Nazi, and we're all supposed to think that he is the good guy. It's coming. They're going to release like a Marvel Studios level movie where the hero of the piece is Homelander, but you love him. Like that's coming. It's for sure coming. I'd never state for a fact, this is from Adam, I'd never state for a fact or that I had any facts at all to John's statement about Chavez or Layton's death. But if I had to bet my life on what actually happened, I'd go with John. Yeah, I mean, like, it just seems very convenient, doesn't it? Just when Jack Layton's about to take power, oh, cancer. Just like Hugo Chavez has eluded the CIA, oh, heart attack. Like, it just seems a touch convenient. And we know this technology exists. Like, that's the other part about it. Like, I'm not just saying it as like a theory crafting thing. Like, we have the specs. The CIA's admitted. Like, we know that this technology exists. So the idea that the technology exists and they're not using it, come on, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, they presented Guaido, this is from Isaac, they presented Guaido at Capitol Hill as the president of Venezuela, and the same, they presented other figures. I'm being a bit circuitous there, Isaac, for reasons. Command. I actually read about Mussolini's fascism, and it actually sounds normal to me. What the fuck? You live in a fascist society, bud. That's the hard truth. Right? Nobody wants to say it out loud. No one wants to point out that the emperor has no clothes. But the truth is that you live in a fascist society. Fascism has become normalized, right? That we've changed the language into like, oh, it's neoliberalism, right? Oh, it's that kind of thing. No, we live in a fascist society. All of the rhetoric that comes out of figures you know, people like Jordan Peterson, right? The whole concept of like, you are the author of your own fate and individualize your own, you are the hero of your own narrative. That's the Nazi ethos, right? This whole individualism thing that we're going through right now, the worship of the individual as a hero, and that the universe will respond to your individualism and all that kind of stuff. It's like the beating heart of Nazi propaganda. And you've got figures like Jordan Peterson who have become very popular and very well known, regurgitating what amounts to fascist and Nazi talking points. Right? Yeah, you're well, and honestly, like, it's so incoherent on the face of it. Right? It's an incoherent worldview. Fundamentally, what you are saying is you are saying that it is possible for one person for that one person's energy to overwhelm not just the energy of all other people that exist, but also all institutions that have existed through time and persist right now, and all energy of all the people who have ever existed, and then all of the energy of the forces of the universe itself. It's incoherent on the face of it. And the idea that people like fucking Rogan are standing up and being like, you just need to ground set and single individualize your individual is childish nonsense. That there are forces that have propelled people through momentum and time. And the idea that it is exclusively you that is responsible for where you are in the world is babyish. Like, baby-brained. Like, Joe Rogan is like a total case in point. Yeah, Joe Rogan's like the king of podcasting because he like literally hit record on a recording thing right as the internet was like right coming in, and he like had some fucking pot conversations with his friends, and they caught on. Like, it's not like he was like, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna be famous, I have a belief. He literally was like, you know, it'd be great if we did what Cheech and Chong did. Record $100 million, please. Like, yeah, bro, individualize your individualism. Yeah, you're a serious person. Serious. Like, and it's disrespectful, frankly. And it's just disrespectful. Like, the most embarrassing part about someone like Jordan Peterson is that he literally says that, like, the Bible is the foundation of truth. He literally says that. The Bible is the foundation of truth. And he doesn't read it, and he doesn't care, and he hates God. Like, he hates God. He thinks that God should bend the knee to him. That's what he thinks. Like, that's literally what he's saying. That God will bend the knee to you if you believe hard enough. If you work hard enough and you do that, God will worship you. That's what Peterson is saying, right? Like, if you read the book, even cursory, even if you just go like, oh yeah, and skip chapters and shit, read the book of Job, right? Like, God will fuck you up. It's explicit in the Bible. If God wants to fuck you up, he will. And if you stand up and say, but I'm a strong individual and I'm the author of my own fate, God will be like, ha! Pfft. Like, have some humility. It's embarrassing. It is. It's embarrassing that somebody would hold on to the Bible and say the things that Peterson says. Like, embarrassing is the word. He's a very embarrassing person. Ugh. And the fact that he's so popular is just even more embarrassing. Like, all you've got to do is read this book. Like, literally, pick up your Bible, right? I got one over here. Pick up your Bible, read it once. This is something, and Command Genius, I'm actually glad you're here to see this, because I know you're like a burgeoning leftist. You're trying to figure things out. Well, you want to figure a lot of shit out. You want to see how fucked up your society is, right? All the stuff that you're hearing and all that. Pick up the Bible. Read either Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, right? You don't need to read the whole thing. Don't do that. That's a slog. That's a whole other ball of wax. Pick Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, right? One of the Gospels. Read it, and you will see very quickly, almost immediately, that all of these people are frauds. All of them. No exceptions. There is like no one walking around clutching the Bible, talking about how it's really good, that is worth any goddamn at all, because they've never read it, or if they have, they despise it. Very, very clearly and obviously. Like, Jesus walks around saying things like, give your money to the poor. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Sell all your possessions and follow me. Well, what do these frauds say? Grind set yourself, and if you're rich, it's because you've done good by God, and if you're poor, it's because you've sinned. Like, shut up. Like, it's so fucking embarrassing. Are there such things as Christian communists? I'm sure. Like, I'm sure. There's such things as flat earthers. Like, that should convince you that anything's possible, dude. Like, that's something that you should realize quick. Anything is possible because there are flat earthers. There are literally people who are like, nope, the earth is flat. I know we've taken a picture of it, but the earth is flat. Jesus was a socialist. Well, I mean, the early Christians were obviously communists. Like, obviously. Like, read the book of Acts. Like, it explicitly states how they arranged their communities, and it sounds like communists. It sounds like communes, right? Like, it's just like they sold all their possessions. They created a collective system where everybody put energy in, like each according to to their abilities, each according to their needs, right? They were communists. Like, and there's a reason why the Roman state like crucified these guys, because they understood that this was a threat. They understood. Can you imagine if you're like the emperor of Rome and you've based your whole thing off of this empire, and there are groups of people being like, we're going to sell everything we have and create little communes and live communally and just live internally and peacefully and have like a little agrarian kind of thing. Yeah, crucify those people. Get rid of them. Right? But if you don't read the book, like people like Peterson or Joel Osteen, like, they don't read the book. They don't know anything about it. Jack Frost, in with 100%. Good to see you, bud. Don't know if I've ever seen you here. A regular on chat said they were Christian communists in the past few days, a week, sometime recently. I do think that there are people who are trying to live their lives by Christian values. I just think that, like, I do think that the society has advanced past Christianity. That the figure of Christ is no longer, like, the central figure that is required. And a lot of the ideas that come out of Christianity are good for about 70%, and then they start to delve into, like, Jesus as a figure. Like a big one that I hear that comes out of Christianity is like, well, Jesus comes to earth he's the figure of God, right? And he's on earth as the figure of God in order to teach us about God and so that we can connect to God through Jesus. And my response to that is, well then how, like, can't I make the same claim about myself? Can I make the same claim about that I came from God and here I am on the earth? I can make that same claim about myself, and you can make it about yourself. So, like, it's not a very special thing to say, right? Like, maybe it was special back when in the year 300 or something, but now it just feels limited in its scope, right? Jesus did miracles. Jesus was a wizard. Jesus had magical powers. Just wait. 200 years from now, there's going to be like people being like, Harry Potter saved the world from the Dark Lord Voldemort. People will be like, praise Potter. My feeling on the whole thing, and my background is evangelical Christianity. Like, I don't mind that it's just a story, right? Like, atheists really get in on this, and they really push their chips in on this, where it's like, Jesus didn't exist. And I'm like, who cares? Like, I don't care at all, right? Like, I actually think that makes it more impressive. Like, if Jesus didn't exist, and you know him 2,000 years out, that's way more impressive if you ask me. It's way more impressive that people were willing to be killed and get crucified and be destroyed for literally a fictional story. Like, you can't, nobody is going to go get themselves crucified for Harry Potter. Like, no one's going to do that, right? So here is a people who created a story and created a fictional character that they were willing to die for. That's fucking hardcore, dude. That's metal. Like, that's fucking crazy awesome. Like, it doesn't matter to me even a little because of the cultural impact of the story, right? Muhammad said, the breath of a poor person in heaven will smell like the best perfume, and the rich will not have a chance to get into heaven. I mean, I rather like what Hugo Chavez said. Hugo Chavez said that a single poor person is worth more than all the property of every rich man on earth. And I think that that's fundamentally true. Like, this worship of money, this worship of property, right? This incredibly self-destructive ethos, which is going to blow up. Like, it's going to blow up in big and significant ways. And it's so funny because, like, I say this kind of stuff and I do think that people think, like, here's this kooky guy making predictions. And I'm like, it's not predictive. If a building is like this, right? If you saw a building standing like this and then you took another look and it was like this, it's not a prediction to say it's going to go like that, right? Like, the building is falling, right? And there's nothing that's gonna, like, you can't put a pole there and have the building, like, just go, oh, that's fine, right? It's coming down. It's not a prediction to say that that's the case. Like, the society that we are living in is in free fall collapse, right? Oh, I said Hugo Chavez. That was actually a misquote. That was from Che Guevara. That was from Che Guevara. So, but the sentiment remains. Command Genius, from Adam, Command Genius, now you know I'm here to back up anything anyone here has ever said, so no one needs to worry about missing an episode and their input not being shared, because I'll do that for you. Good to know, Adam. Content says, Sandinistas are Christians. Good point. Fair enough. Like, I think that I genuinely believe that, like, you should read the works of Engels, you should read the works of Marx, right? You should read what Stalin wrote, what Trotsky wrote, what Lenin wrote, what Mao wrote, what Deng wrote, and what Xi Jinping wrote. You should read what the communists have written, right? But you should also read the Bible. Right? You should also read the Bible, because there's a lot of frauds walking around talking about it. And they're obvious frauds. Like, literally all you got to do is read the book once, and you can see that they're frauds. Diego Maradona, big Che fan, even met him multiple times. Wow, look at you. Fantastic. See, I don't understand what happened, right? For the first hour of my stream, I had literally like 10 viewers, maybe. And now I've got 141. Tell me one example where communism has ever worked, even though China definitely exists. Like, come on, bro. It is starting to get embarrassing. Like, it is starting to get embarrassing, man. Like, Americans are so detached from what is happening in the rest of the world. And then you say that to somebody like this, and their response is always going to be the same. But that's because of capitalism. Because they're so brain dead. Like, their mind is closed. They're not actually interested in looking out into the world. They're not interested in putting themselves in another perspective. Right? That to me is actually the beating heart of the trouble of today's society. That we are unwilling, on purpose, we have refused, right? It's not passive, it is active. We actively refuse to remove our own ego and remove ourselves from our own environment and our own surrounding and place ourselves into another perspective in another person's shoe. Like, we literally refuse to say, well, what would it be like to live in modern day China? What would it be like to live in modern day Vietnam? What would my perspective be? How would I view the world if I was from Laos, let's say? What would that be like? Right? And the first thing that you should do if you actually place yourself there is know what the history is. Right? And not like, you don't need to go too far back, but you should know what modern history is. So if you lived in Vietnam, well, what do you think your perspective of the West would be? What do you think your perspective of America would be? Would you be there being like, wow, what a stalwart society full of good people who are trying their best to spread democracy and liberate everybody around the world? Or would you think that they're Nazis? Because I think that if you lived in Vietnam and were born in Vietnam, you would be like, these guys are Nazis. Like, they're not different. They're indistinguishable, near as I can tell. Right? And you would live your life that way. And it would be pretty black and white, like pretty straightforward. And everyone around you would think so. There wouldn't be anybody going like, yeah, America, the greatest country in the world. We love America. Like, no, dude. Like, you likely spoke to people who went through the Vietnam War and literally witnessed just this bombing campaign of just cleansing the society. Just like fires from a demon. Just might as well have been a dragon. Just, right? Like, if you are living in modern day China, like, you likely knew people who went through the Maoist period, right? That they talk about the 100 years of humiliation, the infliction of the imperialist forces on China. But, like, you know, if you don't know anything, and you don't care to know anything, and all you want to do is go, USA is the best! Capitalism has saved everybody! Then that's all you're ever going to do. Like, that's all you're ever going to do. So there's just no fucking reason to take these guys seriously. Yeah, they're literally doing the 2-button meme when it comes to China. Yeah. Listen to Garv says, listen to the podcast The Prince. It's about Xi Jinping. There is obviously propaganda, but it's also very informative. Yeah, yeah, I just don't demonize China. Like, I mean, we're a very, like, it's so funny, man. Like, we have this, like, it's like this, even leftists, like, people who I really respect, when it comes to China, there's this just real need amongst the ethos of white Westerners to get a dig in. Like, even when you're talking about China as somebody who should ostensibly be an ally to China, you got to get a dig in, right? You can't just focus on building. Like, here's a great article that comes out of Rayner's newsletter from Rayner Shea. The overwhelming scope of the evils that come from capital accumulation's violent mechanisms. I'm a little tempted to read this, but and it talks about necro-capitalism, right? Millions of lives being sacrificed. And then even in this article, though, it's like, it takes a dig at Mao. And it takes a dig at Mao in order to kind of make the point that Marxists are willing to learn from their mistakes, right? That Marxists can look at previous communist projects and say, okay, well, what went wrong? What can we do better? And then it makes the point that capitalists are incapable of that. That because what's happening in capitalism is not a mistake from the perspective of capitalism, right? That what's happening is on purpose. American soft power and propaganda reaches to the third world. Many Asians have this Stockholm syndrome for the white man, despite the atrocities they've committed upon themselves. It's sad. Well, I mean, we like the surgeries that happen in Korea in order to get rid of the double eyelid. You know all about this? Like, that's weird. Like, I think that's really weird. That there's this, like, real culture of, like, trying to make yourself look more white. You know? I find that to be very strange. And like, it kind of flows into what you're talking about. That it just seems like it's, like, look more like the people who have power in the society. And who has power in, like, South Korea? Right? Like, white people. And so it's just very... Boof. Boof is the word that I'll use. Boof. Boof. Yeah, he's only engaging... If you're on TikTok and you're frustrated that I'm not engaging with TikTok, come over to YouTube. It's in the description. Real easy, real straightforward. I don't engage with the TikTok chat for a very obvious reason. Look at it. Look at it. If it's not the Ronnie McNutt crowd, it's the people being like, China's not... Communism never works. Right? I'm interested in having an intelligent discussion with people who are interested in having an intelligent discussion. And this, yeah, your brother Ronnie misses you. It's right there, right? Like, why do I not interact with the TikTok chat? Hard to figure out. YouTube's in the description. Come on over to YouTube. Have a real discussion with me. It's right there. Like I say it right there. Only responding to YouTube chat. Right there. And it's literally because every time I turn over, cringe. There's just some cringe happening. I don't want to spend 3 hours going, ugh. Oh, leftists need to look at post-colonial literatures. I think I am going to read this. The overwhelming scope of the evils that come from capital accumulation's violent mechanisms. I'm going to read this because it's just... The pace of oppression outstrips our ability to understand it. And that is the real trick of the imperial thought machine, says Nemec, the writer and guerrilla fighter from the critically acclaimed recent Star Wars series, Andor. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident. This statement is a continuation of the commentary on U.S. imperialism that Star Wars was, from the start, intended to be. George Lucas observed the profound violence of imperialism, whereas Andor observes the way in which today's imperialism is perpetually intensifying its violence while using that intensity to keep the evil concealed. It was obvious to Lucas and the rest of his generation that his governments represent a malevolent and destructive force. Even if many among this generation sold out, the brutalities of U.S. militarism that they witnessed made the American experiment's moral bankruptcy impossible for them to deny. The infamous war crimes that Washington carried out during its terror campaigns against Vietnam, and the rationale behind this campaign of trying to stop the spread of communism, showed the inherently violent nature of not just the United States, but capitalism itself. As the motivating force behind the evils that Washington committed in Vietnam, and that it's committed in so many other places, is capital accumulation. The partisans of the existing social order who are honest about their goals argue that violence is innate to conflicts between social systems, and that because the system of capital accumulation is supposedly the best one available, capitalism's violence is necessary. The context they leave out is that this system stopped being the optimal one 2 centuries ago, when the bourgeoisie finished replacing the feudal aristocracy as the globe's primary ruling class. Marx and Engels recognized that capitalism's rise was necessary for getting society beyond the limitations feudalism imposed. It was clear to them that capitalism had benefits within this context. The great lie this system's defenders tell is that centuries later, it still represents the epitome of what's realistically possible for civilization to reach. That capitalism didn't become outmoded the moment it fully supplanted the previous order. The truth is that even in places where the means of production have not yet developed enough for society to progress to the next phase, such as Russia in 1917 or China in 1949, the bourgeoisie have not had to remain in power for society to undergo a further rise in living standards. In these cases, the political domination of the bourgeoisie was only holding back the goals of lifting everyone out of poverty and of industry becoming adequately developed. In Russia and China, worker democracy had to be established in order for private business to be utilized to the effect that living standards were lifted up. In Russia, this looked like Lenin's new economic policy of using capital to build up the country's underdeveloped economy. And in China, this looked like Deng's adopting the new economic policy to solve China's equivalent deficiencies. Capital was momentarily needed in these instances, but the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie was not. This is because it was in the bourgeoisie's interest to keep these societies underdeveloped, whereas it was in the proletariat's interests to carry out the development. Then, when capital was utilized to sufficiently build the productive forces, capital was discarded, as it became no longer necessary. This happened in Russia after the NEP was replaced by the highly nationalized Soviet economy, and it's now happening in China as Xi Jinping incrementally replaces the Dengist economy with a nationalized paradigm. In both of these cases, the people saw massive rises in their quality of life, with the Soviet people having come to enjoy lifestyles that in many ways rivaled those of Americans. The Chinese people are seeing the equivalent benefits, with 900 million Chinese having been lifted out of poverty since Deng applied the NEP. Now, absolute poverty is non-existent in China, something that can't be said for the USA. In the USA, it's going up, and has been steadily doing so during the same decades China has been bringing it down. The dictatorship of the bourgeoisie's goal is to prevent this and other types of progress. The power of the capitalist ruling class depends on perpetuating suffering, death, and destruction. You could even say that the oligarchs take pleasure in the deaths that their policies cause. Every working class person who perishes from COVID-19, every Palestinian child who's murdered by the IDF, and every family that's blown up by a drone strike represents a potential political enemy of capital who's been defeated. It benefits the elites, even when individuals who aren't politically challenging them die as a consequence of the system, because that means there are less people who might participate in revolution. The ruling class is sociopathic and sadistic because the system that produced this class is sociopathic and sadistic. The longer this system has managed to outlast its initial usefulness, the more it's taken on this characteristic of inhumanity. What was at first a way to transcend an outmoded system became cancerous, requiring endless growth and consumption in order to survive. Consequently, this new system itself became outmoded. Its rulers hijacked the functions of the state to gain a monopoly on force, which it used to inflict incomprehensible bloodshed to keep itself in power. When capitalism reached its highest stage, that being the stage in which it exports capital to achieve perpetual expansion, it gained the capacity to inflict violence on unprecedented scales. During this stage, King Leopold has carried out his genocide against Africans, the Third Reich has carried out the Holocaust, and the CIA has carried out its comparably deadly counter-revolutionary warfare operations. With these and capitalism's other great crimes, like U.S. imperialism's wars, there has been a continuation of the colonial genocides that started off the original capital expansion period. The more in need of growth the machine has become, the more bodies it's sacrificed. In the cornered situation that the ruling class now finds itself, where U.S. hegemony is disappearing, and the globe's capitalist hub therefore finds itself unable to expand into new markets, The system's only recourse is to cannibalize itself. This means a constant increase in necro-capitalism. Necro means when lives are taken, which in this sense means the elites using their social status to decide who lives and dies. Capitalism has always been necro, with the 21st century representing the point when the degree to which capitalism acts like this is brought ever upward, so the machine can be fed. The scale of the evils that are coming about from this process is so all-encompassing that when one hasn't examined capitalism's consequences on a macro scale, it can be impossible to see what the process looks like. The system is producing too many violations of human rights and too many destructive impacts upon the wider biosphere for the system's vile nature to be initially visible. But when the diverse array of horrors is listed together, necro-capitalism's presence becomes apparent. Necro-capitalism looks like millions of lives being sacrificed worldwide during the pandemic so that corporations can keep their profits up. It looks like our ruling institutions knowingly exacerbating the climate crisis to protect the fossil fuel industry, a decision that's anticipated to take over 80 million lives by the century's ends. It looks like the continuation of a half-century neoliberal austerity program via union busting. It looks like the construction of the largest carceral state on the planet and the militarization of a police force that's proven itself many times to be a human rights menace. It looks like drone wars and bombing efforts that have come to regularly take place in at least half a dozen countries since the war on terror began. It looks like sanctions that in effect amount to genocides against the people of Iran, Venezuela, Syria, and the other countries where Washington's economic warfare is capable of bringing hunger. It looks like a project to militarily occupy historically colonized places like Africa and consequently terrorize the locals in an effort to counter China. It looks like new efforts at preventing Latin America's liberation, whether through sending troops to prop up Haiti's neo-colonial regime or a coup in Peru. It looks like efforts to back the genocides that are being committed by Israel, Saudi Arabia, India, and fascist Ukraine, all to try to gain geopolitical advantages. It looks like the fomenting of civil conflicts in Ethiopia, Myanmar, and other geopolitically significant countries, even if this leads to famines and refugee crises. Every one of these developments is directly traceable to a tangible and specific factor, the drive to accumulate capital. The partisans of the existing order put forth stories about Washington's adversaries committing human rights abuses, being anti-democratic, or violating NATO's concept of what international law should be. They compile lengthy collections of sources to make it look like these stories are beyond doubt, yet these sources all get their information from the same network of intelligence agencies, paid defectors, dishonest researchers, and NGOs. When you examine the core motive of why these actors promote anti-communist narratives and NATO war propaganda, it's clear they do so to defend the existing power structure. Upholding peace and human well-being is the last thing they care about, or they wouldn't be aiding the side that depends on sabotaging these things. When communist governments have failed to uphold peace and well-being, Marxists have learned from the mistakes of their predecessors. China's modern Communist Party has denounced the cruel catastrophe, which was Mao's Cultural Revolution, and has adopted a foreign policy model different from the ultra-leftist one which led the PRC to support Pol Pot. Xi Jinping has also repudiated the Soviet leadership's fatal mistake of abandoning the state as an instrument for class struggle, and responded to China's anti-corruption protests by carrying out a merciless campaign against corrupt officials and businessmen. The US government will never learn from its mistakes because they aren't mistakes. They're the tools that capitalism uses to function. Policies that destroy the livelihoods of working people, wars that destroy nations, the arming of abusive law enforcement, these and all other ways in which the capitalist state fails to satisfactorily govern actually represent successes for the ruling class. These things are indispensable for keeping the ruling class in power. Pointing out how capitalism has become nothing more necro during our generation is going to become more so as its crisis intensify. Shouldn't be the basis on which we have to argue for revolution. The reality is that this system has always involved committing injustices against the great majority of the globe, making it so that for those across the peripheral countries, the concept of saving our future is out of date. These people got their future stolen from them centuries ago, first with colonialism's plunder, and then with how colonialism has been kept alive through modern capital exports. They're trying to find a way out of the apocalypse that imperialism engineered for them long ago. It's in them, and those within the core countries who have also been disenfranchised, where the movement for liberating the globe is based. None are better capable of understanding the impacts of this system than the ones who've most directly felt the suffering the system creates. This suffering comes in the form of generational trauma, like with black and indigenous communities confronting colonialism's crimes, or with people in countries like Cambodia and the DPRK recalling the bombs Washington dropped on them, as well as in the form of harms that's now being actively perpetuated, like massacres in Peru's coup regime, or the ways mass incarceration breaks entire families. These are the things that matter, not the hypocritical human rights concerns of liberals who attack Washington's geopolitical challengers. Those who have been scarred by the social system that liberalism represents have no reason to listen to these calls to hate Washington's adversaries. If anything, they have reason to have affectation for these countries due to their weakening the imperial structure. With education, organization, training, and mobilization, those cast aside by capital will rise to exact justice. They'll then join these countries in the construction of a new world, a world where exploitation and subjugation no longer define state policy. After that point, the state itself will become an unnecessary appendage of the old order, as it will no longer be needed to fight against bourgeoisie power. The state will then wither away, like it's already been in the DPRK. Society will have advanced to its next stage. Ooh, yeah, I'm glad I read that one. I wanted to. When I first saw it, I was like, yeah, I should read this one. Glad I did. It's always good to read stuff that is well written and well articulated. And I like reading it out loud because it helps keep my voice alive and keep... It's good to say a lot of fancy words in a row. There you go. It's as simple as that, right? It's good to say a lot of fancy words in a row. Yeah, Leon, I agree with you. Holy smokes, that was good. That was a good script, man. Rainer Shea, man, he knows how to write. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but my agreements, I think, are mainly theoretical and mainly like the broader idea. Definitely 100%. I'm right there with him. That I would never put a wedge and break off from a man like Rainer Shea over the minor disagreements, the minor historical disagreements that we have. It's that beautifully written, beautifully written. And I like what you said here, Ligand Z. I'm stealing this one. China makes mistakes, but the U.S. doesn't, because for the U.S. it's a feature, not a bug. Yeah. Like the invasion of Iraq, the destruction of Libya, these weren't errors. They were done on purpose for a reason, right? They weren't mistakes. America doesn't learn. Like and like America is heading for 100 years of humiliation. There's just no other way to say it. Thank you, Dee Marie. I appreciate that. America is heading for 100 years of humiliation. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles, do the stuff, donate some money. If you donate to my Patreon, it gets you into the Discord. We're I don't know, God bless us, we're all trying to keep this whole thing going, right? We're trying to, and it's useful to get into the Discord because we all know that eventually the imperial state is going to come through these socials and eradicate people like me, right? They're going to purge someone like me. So it's good to get into the Discord because then you can find me. And I'm going to continue this work through things like the Discord and through other places. But if you don't get there, then you'll never know when it happens, right? And I have no illusions about this. Like, when it happens, I'm not going to break down and kill myself, right? Like, I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And it's, so it's just a matter of being prepared. And I'm sure that there are other things that I could do, but I'm just one goddamn man, right? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. This one had real power on it. It had real power on it. And like, the collapses of the capitalist system are just getting more and more obvious. That's a big reason why I don't really I don't really take people who are like, what? Give me one place where communism has worked. Capitalism's better than communism. Like, I don't take it very seriously because I mean it just seems like a baby talking, right? Like it's like a 12-year-old who still worships his dad. You know, my dad could beat up your dad. That's kind of the intellectual capacity of these sorts of comments. It's like, obviously the system is failing. Like just like the signs are like even in your day-to-day life. Like, it used to be, like back when it was the Bush administration, right? Back when it was these sort of, like, and we were all still kids. Like, all the millennials were still kids. It was less obvious because there was still this kind of like, oh, we're all going to school and we're all doing this kind of thing and we're going to build a society that way and all that, right? And the crumbling of the society was just beginning because of the extractive policies of neoliberalism and the deindustrialization of America. They were all just sort of beginning. So being a communist or a leftist during that period of time felt a little bit more abstract to the masses, right? But now you've got like the massive inflation crisis going on, housing prices going through the roof, rent going through the roof. The collapses of the system are manifesting in your day-to-day life. And then you also have like the literal financial collapses, the financial collapse of 2008. You've got the stock market crash that happened throughout COVID. You've got the COVID period and the just ridiculous response that capitalism had to the populace through that period, right? It's become obvious. It's become so obvious that the people who are standing up and still defending capitalism are babies. Like, and we can treat them as such. They are unserious babies. That if you are not at the very least saying we need to reform this system, that we need to create reformation, that capitalism needs a reform, if you are not at least saying that, then you can be ignored and should be ignored widely. And if you're willing to admit that the system of capital should have a reform, but you're refusing to say what should be reformed, like Peterson and Shapiro and Crowder and all these frauds say, right? That they're willing to come to a point where they're like, yeah, there are problems and we should probably find solutions, but they have no solutions, then you should be widely ignored. That if you're not willing to form a solution and present a solution, then why should we listen to you? And if you're not willing to say that there are problems and we should actually face those problems, then you're a baby and we can ignore you. And we need to start taking more seriously the solutions that are being offered to the left of the spectrum, because those are real solutions. That when the banking system collapses next, because it's going to collapse again, because it can't help itself, it has to collapse. That's what it does. We should nationalize it. That when industries come to the government asking for yet another $1 billion bailout, we should say, no, fuck you, and nationalize it. That we should stop pretending like free market capitalism is a solution, and that all we have to do is introduce competition, this embarrassing idea that the way to solve the problem is to continue doing the thing that's causing the problem. It doesn't work. It isn't going to work. And the longer we take to actually seriously address these issues, the further and further and further behind we're going to fall, behind countries that are taking seriously the solutions to the problems, And the more obvious it's going to become. It's going to become extremely obvious, extremely soon, sooner than you would like, that once the world moves off the dollar as the reserve currency and begins to actually interact with itself without us, they are going to turn to us and say, what is it that you do? What is it that you create? What is it that you manufacture? How is it that you're attempting to build and create something worthy of our attention? And when we say, we're white people, we're the best, pay attention to us because manifest destiny, we're the God Kings, the rest of the world is going to say, okay there, champy, and shunt us into the corner, paying attention to us only when we amass our military in order to destroy them. We are going to be isolated, we are going to be ignored, and they are not going to sell us anything because our currency will be valueless, because they won't be able to exchange it for anything, because we don't make anything. Like, this is what's coming for America. This is what's coming for Canada and Europe. That we don't produce anything except war. The dollars that we want to give people to exchange something will not be able to be exchanged for anything, because China and India and Russia and Africa and Latin America are going to begin trading on currencies other than the dollar, because those currencies will be able to be traded for goods. The value of the dollar will plummet, inflation will skyrocket, and you won't be able to buy basic goods. And if you think that that can't happen, then you are illiterate. Because that very thing is what happened in Germany, where people were literally demanding their pay at the start of the day and rushing to buy goods with it, because they knew that if they waited by the end of the day, the price of those goods would double. This is what's coming for us. It's already happening, and it's going to accelerate, and it's going to accelerate faster than you want and faster than you think. And if all you're doing is standing around saying, capitalism is great, then you're the fucking idiot. And you're going to get side-blinded by this shit. Like, and the only solution, the only way this is going to resolve itself, the only way we are going to be able to actually move into a more civilized position is if we amass on the streets and surround the halls of power. Because the hard truth is that when the system collapses and when the system decays so badly, the powerful will not respond rationally. They will not say, oh, we should create, we should reindustrialize. We should create a jobs program. We should invest in education. We should actually help people and create a civil society. They will simply leave. Period. They will go to an island. They will go to the top of a mountain. They will surround themselves with police. They will and hope that you'll just sit in front of a TV while they blow up the rest of the world. Like, it's happening. And if you're too fucking thick to figure it out, then you're just going to get rolled right over. And likely you'll just join the fascists. Like, and what sucks about all of this, what's embarrassing about all of this, is that we could just make this place nice, you know? The place could just be nice. We could literally say, of the climate catastrophe, We could say, okay, we need to take that seriously. So we need to create a war economy to fight the climate change catastrophe, invest in serious ideas for how to pivot away from fossil fuels, nationalize the fossil fuel industry, refuse to allow wasteful items and wasteful products to be sold or manufactured, like trucks that are as big as World War II tanks. Like, I can't imagine a more ungodly thing than in the midst of a climate change crisis fueled by the burning of carbon, we're building and manufacturing trucks that are bigger than World War II tanks to sell to individual farmers and shit to drive on roads that can't handle them. Like, we should be nationalizing the fossil fuel industry, reducing the carbon impact on purpose. We should be shutting off the lights in Dundas Square. We should be conserving energy consumption wherever we can. We should be banning the crypto market. We should be absolutely seizing control of this and declining our carbon usage. But of course, what that would mean is confronting our imperialism. Because the number one producer of carbon emissions, the United States military. We emit carbon when we send a carrier over there with jets. We emit carbon when we shoot rockets at space. We emit carbon with all of that. But we're too stupid to figure it out. And stupid's the word. And so we're going to pay. We're going to pay a heavy price. There are going to be serious consequences. You are going to live in a society where the wage that you are paid will not buy a loaf of bread. That's happened before, and it's happening again. And the powerful and the rich will not do anything about it. They will simply retreat. And the only way that you will interact with them is by facing down their thugs. You'll never see these people's faces. You'll never see them in real life. You will only interact with them through the reach of their wealth and power through their militarized forces. Oh. So what I always like to say, don't fall into despair. Don't fall into doomerism. Because you're still a human being. You're still a living creature who is capable of joy, contemplation, contentment, compassion, love. You can still sit down with friends and family and pass away a day in simple, quiet conversation, the quiet enjoyment of each other's presence. You can still go sit out in a field and watch the sky. You can still smell the flowers and feel the wind on your skin. You can still sit under a tree and dwell upon the passing of time. They haven't taken these things away from you yet. And even if they spend $100 trillion, they cannot take you away from you. And so we struggle, and so we fight, and so we work, and so we dig in our heels to find our base humanity, to find empathy and compassion for one another, and love for one another. Do away with the shame and the guilt that we have been inflicted by not being a productive citizen. Do away with it. A person sitting in a field watching the clouds is more meaningful than the entire empire. That we as a society would be better off widely if all we did was leave these cities and went and lay down in the fields and watched the clouds. We would be a better society by far if we simply stopped participating and told our politicians and our owners to go fuck themselves and run their own fucking institutions. And they'll call us lazy, and they'll say that we're just envious. And we should just roll our eyes and wait for them to die. I know I say it all the time on this channel, and I feel it right now more than anything. Thank you for your comment, Swirling Dervish. I appreciate that, bud. If you are a kid, if you're in high school, your teachers have nothing meaningful to teach you. That the fact that they are not organizing massive walkouts and massive strikes themselves tells you that they have nothing to teach you. There is nothing valid about any of these institutions. That if you are a kid in a school, your objective should be to organize massive walkouts to cease participating. And if you are the parent of such children, your goal should be to support it. You are being abandoned. These institutions exist to make you sleepwalk into it, so that you'll just quietly accept the abandonment they have planned for you. Stop. Don't. Fight back. At least let it be known that you're not going to die quietly. And should the state make an example of you, just remember, the state made an example of Christ. That we stand to be made an example of. Because we refuse to die quietly. Because our great offense is that we insist that we should fight back. And what's so embarrassing about our rulers is that our demands are quite small. Our demands are quite simple and quite easy. That every one of us should simply have food and shelter. That's all. There's no grand proclamation. I have no manifesto. The reason why I am here, the reason why I have come to this place is simply because I continuously asked the simplest of questions. Why don't we all have food and shelter? And by pulling on that thread, I have come to find that the reason why we don't have food and shelter is because if we did, it would mean that psychopaths would lose power. And here we are. Gathad, what kind of communism do you support? The kind that gives people food and shelter. That was easy. Not the answer you were expecting, Gathad? Not the answer you were hoping for? Adidas. Which god is Adidas? The god Adidas. Adidas, the god of speed and strength. Who is... There is no Adidas. The name's from the company's founder. Oh, okay. That makes it unique. So Adidas is literally just a manifestation of the individual who created the thing in the first place. Okay. See, at least Nike is named after a Greek god, right? The god of victory. I hope you're all doing well out there, man. We're getting to the end of the stream. Ugh. And I'm getting to be an old man, I gotta say. Right? Getting to be an old man. Although I'm also working out more, and so I'm tired more often and easier. Oof. Even like 2-3 years ago, I would do a stream like this, and it would be like... Although, how long have I been doing this? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know what? Now does seem like a good time to close the stream down. Seems as though we've all fallen into kind of a quiet contemplation with one another. I don't feel like kicking up a big argument or a big conversation. Although I don't mind being here with you guys, you know? I don't mind that at all. Sorry. Every single time I do it, man, I just glance over to TikTok, and there's always somebody just saying it's either the Ronnie McNutt stuff, or it's someone being like, like. Although there was somebody who said, we got a real Karl Marx over here. It's like, there you go. Thanks. The beard, eh? I'm hoping this thing goes white. That's what I hope happens. I'm reaching more for Santa Claus, is what I'm reaching for. I'm really hoping that I get a real Santa Claus vibe going on here. You know what I really hope for myself? When I fall into quiet contemplation and I start to get into kind of a wishful sort of thing, I hope that I turn 65 or 68 and somehow the wheel of fate turns so that I end up with a lot of money because I want to just hand money out. Like, the number one thing that has convinced me that that the ruling class is just full of total psychos is that these guys have like hundreds of billions of dollars and they don't walk around just handing their money out. Like, how do you do that? I don't understand how you do that. Like, if I had even $1 million, right? Like, sure, I would take a piece of it and keep it for myself so that I had food and shelter. I think that's normal, right? But I would just like walk up to people on the streets and be like, here you go. You want some money? What do you think? You know those TikToks you see where people are like, do you want $10 now or double it and give it to the next person? Do you want $20 now or double it, give it to the next person? I think that's what I would do. I think that would be great. Just walk around, just giving money to people. And I just don't know how Bezos doesn't do it. Like, it just seems so obvious to me. Like, take $1 million, create wads of like $1,000 bills, right? Like a nice wad of bills that gives you $1,000, and just walk down New York, like the main street of New York, go to Times Square, and just be like, here you go. And people will be like, well, that's pretty scary. Won't someone come and steal the basket or hold a gun and hold you up? I would just be like, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, there you go. Take it. I don't care. I got $1 billion. Like, I don't care. Take the basket. Like, if you're willing to come to me with a weapon and threaten my life for money, you must need it. Off you go. Right? And the fact that they don't do it, like, I think that tells a pretty big story all by itself. Like, give your money away. Give your money to the poor. Especially if you're one of these people who actually thinks the Bible has any value. Give your money away. Give your money to the poor. Like, and I guess my challenge to the universe is, I dare you to make me rich. I dare you to make me rich. If you're sitting there thinking, this guy is probably total bullshit, that he'd become rich and he'd hoard it just like the rest, well, I dare you. I dare you to make me rich. Space 11 Kitten. I appreciate your streams. As always, thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas. I would give so much money away if I had it, absolutely. I just can't, like, every time that I've received money or I've given money away, like, it feels good, and I don't know why it doesn't happen more often. I don't know why there's such a resistance to it, to this idea that, like, oh, a person who has so much money that if they lost half their money, like, these billionaires just lost a bunch of money. Do you think it matters to them? Not really. Like, they lost $100 billion worth of wealth. Well, they still live in palaces, right? Like, they wouldn't even notice it was gone. Give it away. Help people. Let people have food. Let people have shelter. I don't know why it's such a struggle. Oof, speaking of struggle, I'm actually really hungry. I'm gonna go get some food. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.